Hey, the better rifle. Drop the gun! Oh, shit! I'm hit. I'm okay. But I'm not gonna die.
Welcome to Badges, Bullets, and Blunders, the show that tells funny cop stories from real people who live them. I'm the host, Travis Harless. Before we get started, if you'd like to support the podcast, go check out our friends at Slick Sleeves Syndicate. It's just a t-shirt company. The link's in the description. Today's guest is my friend Chris. Chris is a lieutenant at a police department in California. Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What did you do before you became a police officer? How long have you been a police officer? And what are some of the assignments that you've worked as an officer?
Yeah. Before I was a police officer, I was in the Army for a while. Came straight out of the Army into the police academy, essentially. Been doing this for what, like 23-ish, 23 and a half, somewhere around there. Jobs, patrol, traffic, long time in traffic, rode motors, did reconstructions, did most of the detective jobs. Sergeant, patrol sergeant, admin lieutenant. That's what I do now.
Okay.
Work in the performance and analysis division.
Tell us about being an admin sergeant, admin lieutenant. What is performance analysis?
Yeah, so performance and analysis.
Sorry.
How
Sidetrack. How many different names has that had?
Well, okay, so the one unit is called quality assurance. No, that's not true either.
No.
It started as professional standards.
Yeah.
We try to change kind of the focus, the tone, as it were. Change the name to quality assurance in 2019. That's about the time I started in there.
Okay.
And then later we picked up crime analysis, the crime analysis unit. So like it didn't have a clear direction. So then when it was attached to the office of the chief, it was called the Office of Performance and Analysis.
Okay.
Trying to draw some distinction between the two units. We also have the wellness unit and the division now as well. And then it became a division, which encompasses the three units: quality assurance, crime analysis, and wellness.
Gotcha.
And compliance, technically. Compliance is an extra part of that.
Is that so? You're quality assurance and in compliance.
I am responsible for quality assurance, compliance, and analysis.
But not wellness.
But not wellness.
Gotcha.
It's too many things for one guy.
Yeah, that's a mouthful.
And I would say the wellness side is its own thing. It almost needs full-time attention just the guardrails in wellness. Forget all the services and stuff we offer, but like what we should be involved in versus what we shouldn't, even just managing that one thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like as the employer who focuses on the whole person, where's the line?
Mm-hmm.
Just that one thing seems like a full-time job to me.
Yeah. And just knowing your personality, you don't seem very cut out for like that line of work.
I would say that empathy is not the first quality people identify with.
Like if you were a video game character and they have like the attributes.
Yeah, the skills, empathy would be low.
Or they have like the strength and constitution and
I would say that I'm
low on empathy.
Low on concern about how people feel about things, and high on emotional intelligence, which makes me somewhere in the vicinity of a psychopath.
Chaotic neutral.
Chaotic neutral. There you go. That's a good way to put that. But when it comes to the empathy stuff, the empathy stuff.
Wellness.
The wellness stuff. Thank you. When it comes to the wellness stuff, it's when I have to help make a decision for some reason in that arena, it's very like black and white managerial approach as opposed to like the whole person. It's something actually, I don't know if this is a topic we're carrying on, but as I reflect on how I do business, it's sort of like my big area of emphasis this last year or so, both personally and professionally, whatever, like kind of opening the door to those kind of approaches in a different way, I think, but I don't know.
So that's something you're working on.
Yeah. Emotional development or personal development, whatever you want to call it. That's what I'm aiming towards.
There you go.
Is being more thoughtful about people in general.
Good.
Less mission, more people. You know what I mean?
Old age.
What do you mean?
Emotional, damn it.
I just
I'm
mean
not that old, dude. I'm only 45, bro.
I just mean that, like, as you grow,
I look old, but I'm not as old.
As you get
I
old, you
probably
said
look,
old age.
I probably look like the
look how
oldest
gray
guy.
I am. Okay, come on.
Oh yeah, your 4 hairs.
As you get
No,
older.
I'm just saying that, like, when you get older, you become more. I don't know if I want to say the word empathetic based on the current trends, but maybe sympathetic.
Reflective, I would
Reflective.
say. I would say you get more reflective the older you get. You get more thoughtful about. I know people that have left here that left my agency. How about that?
Yeah.
That like nobody has a good thing to say about them 20 years after they're gone. The few people that remember them. Like, I don't know that that's a thing I care about in that sense, but it's something you think about for sure. Is like, especially the closer you get to walking away. And I still have several years left to turn things around, I guess. But
Like how people are going to remember you.
yeah,
You're not gonna make it sound like an Ebenezer Scrooge story.
yeah, I know. That's why it made me laugh. It's like one of the great narratives, dude. The comeback story. But I don't necessarily feel that way now. But what I am saying is, like, you get more thoughtful about when you go to leave. Like, is it just going to be some silly story, some vapid story about you from that they have to tell? Like, whichever chief drew the straw that day shows up and is like, oh, I remember this guy.
Yeah.
And then you get your thing and they throw you.
Oh, it's your cookie social.
Yeah, at the cookie social. So you get a little more reflective on it. I think for me, it's more about recognizing that if you're perceived a certain way and you don't like it, you have a responsibility to do something about it. And you don't necessarily care a lot how people feel overall about me in a general sense, but I don't want them to think I don't care about them. So it's somewhere in between there, I think. I don't know.
You know, you were talking about when you leave and what they'll say about you. I was thinking the cookie socials they do. They have the little smiley face cookies.
Yeah.
There's I won't say this person's name, but when he's on the way out of the cookie social, we've had this idea. I wanted to go and buy the cookies instead of getting the smiley face ones, get the frowny face ones, and then smuggle them in there. And then right before the cookie social starts, and open them up. And
is it okay?
Yeah, we know.
Is it?
We don't have to talk. We don't have to.
I think I have an idea.
Yeah.
But let's say that we didn't know. I think it would matter to me if it was done, what the intent was.
To get a laugh.
Just a laugh out of the people who already wanted to laugh about it, or out of everyone because it's genuinely ironic and funny?
Well,
seems like it could be hateful and funny, or you know what I mean?
You're thinking way deeper than I ever thought about this. So,
no, surface level stuff.
Yeah, I'm a very shallow surface level kind of.
That's why I work indoors, I guess. I don't know. Right?
Yeah. So, talk to us about quality. Sorry, I'm fucking up already. I can't even remember all the acronyms we went through.
Well, because you wanted to know the history. That's not my fault. That's your fault.
Yeah. Well, quality assurance, or the Department of Quality and
sorry. What's that movie called with Matt Damon and them? The Adjustment Bureau. Mm-hmm. The Adjustment Bureau. That's what somebody called it. The Adjustment Bureau.
You know, I pissed off the chief one time when I was working in patrol, and I was assigned to the afternoon late shift, which works from 5 p.m. till 3 a.m. And my lieutenant, my OIC, had to take a day off, and he couldn't get a lieutenant to cover for him. And so I had to come in like 2 hours early, and I had to sit in the OIC chair, which is very common. And then at 5 o'clock when our briefing started, I went down to the auditorium where we were doing briefing, and I walked in like 2 minutes late. And I walk in, and the chief and one of the ACs are in there. And I said, as I came in, "Oh, sorry, I'm late. I'm stuck sitting in the chair today because the lieutenant's gone until whatever time." And the chief says to me, "You say that like it's some kind of a punishment." And then I came back thinking that he would, a lot of my jokes don't land. This is a time when it didn't land. And I said, Chief, it's funny. You can't swing a dead cat in this place without hitting some lieutenant with a word salad title that nobody knows what they do. But when it comes time to find an OIC, no one's available. And it did not land. He did not think it was funny.
You didn't find any humor in that?
No. So.
The word salad.
Word salad titles, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So word salad titles, that's a great segue. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the division's mission, if you want to call it that, is to foster an environment that makes other people's jobs easy. bottom line. So that covers a lot of things. It covers like crime analysis and the crime reduction strategy, and then all of the intel analysis and operational analysis that puts the right cops on the right dots, those sorts of things, and shortens the distance between knowing and figuring it out, right? On the quality assurance side, they sort of focus on, they do focus on kind of the internal stuff. So if you think of crime analysis, thinks about the outside world, QA focuses on the inside world.
Okay.
So they do all of the oversight and accountability stuff that goes with inspections, audits, all that kind of fun stuff everybody loves so much. They do early intervention. They do policy work. They're responsible for the stipulated judgment with California Department of Justice. And sort of generally data management, data integration, developing opportunities to collect the right numbers about the right things to help make management decisions, those sorts of things. And then, of course, wellness does whatever, but the normal, they do the normal wellness stuff, and they do it very, very well. As a
Yeah.
matter of
Okay.
fact.
There you go. There
Yeah.
you go. That's recovery.
Yeah, no, you know what I mean? That's
Kind of proving my point earlier, but there we go.
Yeah, no, they do a great job over there. Those guys are crushing it, actually. I think they're probably some of the better stuff in the country, which is interesting. But
Yeah. They got recliners. They got snacks.
the whole construct of a wellness center, you have your own clubhouse.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
If you use it, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know who uses it. Who doesn't use it.
I used to use it. I don't use it much anymore.
Go there for the
I heard it's become
energy
unpopular,
drinks.
but I don't know
Hmm.
why. And I don't need to know why, I guess. But that's just something somebody told me. It was like a big hit and then kind of fell off, whether the newness wore off or turned into somebody's turf or something. I don't know.
Yeah. They have like internal wars. Like,
Yeah,
no,
turf wars.
no valley cars allowed.
No, this is
I mean,
my
that
spot.
kind of did happen a little bit.
Did it really?
Well, I mean, because it's in one zone. So when you have like out of zone cars coming in and hanging out like for a prolonged period of time, it's just like,
and then it's like, who's handling your stuff?
yeah, like who's handling your zone
Is
if
that
you're
still
out
a
here?
thing? Do people still care about who's handling their stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do they?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because I mean, if you don't handle your zone, then someone else
Someone's
has
gotta
to.
handle it.
Well, I get it. I'm a big fan. What I'm saying is I don't know if that's true. I watch them bounce around.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, it's because people are busy.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
People don't like bouncing around, but
What
I
do you
mean,
mean?
it happens.
Well, I mean, it's the same. Like we were talking, we have it off camera about the good old days, and some
Somebody's
things
working really hard. Somebody's not working
Some
very
things
hard.
don't change. Well, and
Yeah.
you probably see that in your internal analysis.
Well, that's part of what
So
we're
it's a-
trying to bring parity to is that there's like this fundamental idea that everyone has like a minimum output level.
Mhm.
It's relatively average, right? Like there's some average you could derive. Like this is what people should be able to do with the tasks, time, and
Yeah.
training we give them. And then you have people that like blow that away. So they become the ceiling. And you're like, how the real question is like, where's the happy middle where you can expect people
Mhm.
to like achieve things versus the opposite, which is like one guy carries a whole shift.
Yeah.
And then you get into like yeah, but what are you doing with your time and all of those? Like, is it a management thing where we're not telling you what we want you to do with your time? Is it they just don't want to work thing?
Mhm.
And then like, or the inverse is what did we teach them to do and what do we expect them to do with what we taught them to do? Right? Like I can distinctly remember when I started this job, the FTOs that I had, like you weren't still for 5 minutes at a time after maybe like the second week. The first week you kind of build up to it, but after that it's like there's a call you're going to handle it. There's a call you're going to handle it. And you didn't stop to do paper or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
You like wound up at 4 a.m. somewhere trying to hammer out 5 people's worth of work,
Yeah.
thinking it's how this job is going to be the rest of the time. Right.
Yeah.
And then that sort of like somewhere in the middle of my career turned into like, let's be more deliberate with the report writing.
Yeah.
So sit down and take your time and figure it all out and whatever. And then that turned into, okay, we got a call. We got to hang out for a little while. And that, so the point is like, I don't even know if that last part's true.
Yeah.
What I do know is that the pace of just how you were expected to do stuff, it changed somewhere along the way. And then if this guy taught that guy that, and that guy's making sense of what he was taught, then the next guy is going to do something totally different.
Well,
So
let me
like
ask
the
you this.
degrading of the pace of work, maybe you could call it, but I don't even know if that's true.
Do you think that were there lazy FTOs back when you were going through that phase?
Do I think there were lazy FTOs?
That didn't operate at that pace you were talking about, where it's like bang, 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 bang.
It's funny because you don't want to sound like we had to walk uphill both ways.
Yeah.
I don't remember lazy FTOs, but I didn't have. Okay, my FTOs.
But you probably don't have a lot of time to think about what the other ones are doing.
Well, and that pace of work, like my FTOs were highly regarded as savages, both of them for different reasons, right? And they had very high standards for the performance level. And then you had like just the nuances of the generation of people that were on patrol back then on like midnights.
Yeah.
You had like people that took this job very, very seriously and expected you to know it from the beginning and operate at an elite level. Like the standard mediocre patrolman is not acceptable. Like I remember getting my ass chewed by a senior, deserved, because I showed up on again, in that culture, deserved probably, but I showed up on a call for a shooting when he already had to handle a shooting at some point in that day. And like, I think I was probably 2 or 3 reports down, but I was certainly the highest badge number at that call. And like, it wasn't anything special as far as the shooting goes, just some casings and, paperwork, probably some canvas type stuff. But that dude lit me up for 10 minutes about why he doesn't need to handle another shooting because he knows how to handle a shooting. And it doesn't matter what I think I know. And I wouldn't say it was deserved in that context, but I've always kind of, just kind of taking it, but my point is like the expectation, the accountability at the lowest levels, like patrolmen lighten you up for not performing at a high level and stuff.
And I would say that
I don't feel like that's the same.
That's not, but I would maybe reassure you is it's not all.
I don't mean to think that it is.
Like our first guest, Brandon, he came on and he, as an FTO, was very much like what you're describing. Like there was no downtime. It's go, 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 go.
Yeah.
Part of that is because he likes overtime. So he's
pushing the envelope to make a little dough on the back.
Well, that's not the only reason, but but
it doesn't hurt.
But and he doesn't mind staying late and sitting there with them while they do the reports.
I want to ask you about overtime in a minute.
So he'll run them all the way to the end, and it's like, no, you're not writing your reports yet. Like we're working from 1 to 11. Like you can start writing your report at 10:30.
Yeah, that's the way it was when we came on.
You got 5 reports. Well, then you're going to sit here and write 5 reports. And
my second FTO. So back then, we still did a little traffic, but so like my final FTO, the one that did your shadow stuff and all that. He had a rule that we would not stop working until we generated 3 something of significance to him. So it'd be a pinch, it would be a report, it would be enough stops of some kind.
Yeah, you don't get lunch till you get a filling.
Yeah. But I mean, and I don't even mean lunch. I mean like nothing.
Yeah.
And he would write like 3-page DERs every day about everything from like how I started the car at the beginning to, dude, it was stressful.
Yeah.
Stressful. I remember, I guess I am telling you stories, even though I don't like telling stories. New Year's Eve in my first year. So we had maybe, I think we went to FTO like in October, November. So like the middle of the second half of FTO, like on New Year's Eve. And we were working out on the east side generally, like, I don't know, D8 and 9, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's
high crime area.
Valley, no, all metro now, right?
Yes.
But anyways, so we were working out there and it was aggressive the whole time, like nonstop, wall-to-wall calls, all for good stuff, all night long. And I distinctly remember leaving that like second to last stabbing or whatever we were dealing with there. And I was like, dude, I'm done. This is not what I don't think I could do this every day.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have so little time on that you're like,
it's overwhelming.
Yeah. Not only have so little time on, you don't recognize what an anomaly a day like that is. To this day, I still think maybe it's emotional. One of the hardest days of patrol work you had to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's a lot of wild days in between, but
yeah.
I distinctly remember just being like, nope. And that guy, despite how hard he was on me all the time, I kind of told him that, like, I don't know if I could do this again.
Yeah.
He was like, few and far between, man. Just come back tomorrow. Let's see how it feels or whatever.
Yeah.
Like very encouraging in his own way. And very close now, but just chasing that guy's expectations above just trying to be like half-ass good at the job. Forget that part.
Yeah.
The expectations were outrageous.
Yeah.
And I even remember him that way now.
But when you operate at that level, like, in the early stages of like field training, and then when you get done, like, and you are released out on your own, you're prepared because you're,
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
100%. I
Because
will
your
say
day,
that.
your regular average day as a new patrolman is not nearly that hard.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? You might get a couple of heinous things here and there, and have to handle 5, 6 reports or whatever a night, but
no,
it's not at the level of that it was when they're running you call to call to call, and you don't have the experience to do it. So you kind of work yourself up to where you're able to handle that, and then when you get released, it's almost never as difficult as on those days.
And you know what?
And that's kind
one
of
of
the
the
point.
things I wish I would have learned on FTO is that there is, and neither FTO, they probably didn't reflect on it in this way, that there's absolutely room to go and hide and just be like, I'm done for 10 minutes, not doing nothing else for just a little bit. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That part we didn't get. I think actually I would have been fine on that. Like you say, reflect on it, whatever. But I found like you could get over a lot in a hurry and get back to work or whatever. But without that little break, it just becomes just like a wave of thing after thing.
Yeah.
Very overwhelming.
Wearing you down. That wears you down.
Oh man. Yeah. The emotional trauma of this job, wellness, I'm talking about it in a positive way, is so neglected.
Yeah.
Like you see all these guys who retire and they carry so much weight. I'm talking 25 years of retirement.
Yeah.
Like you look and you're like, man, I'm trying not to be that. You know what I mean? Just carrying this weight of this stuff.
We haven't really talked about it here before, but like I've said in other settings where you're going to the worst day of someone's life
Yeah.
about every day, and usually like multiple times a day. And it's not the worst day of your life. It's just kind of just another day, or you compartmentalize it or whatever. But interacting with another person on the worst day of their life and doing that over and over and over again, like you get a little bit of that, like gets kind of rubbed off on you. And then you just kind of carry that forward to the next day.
Are you familiar with like the moral injury concept?
I think expand on it.
Yeah. So moral injury, I'm probably going to butcher it and somebody will have an opinion about it, but essentially it's like your inner sense of right and wrong. And like anytime that's damaged by something you see, do, like that's in great conflict with your sense of morality.
Yeah.
Right. It's like an injury to your morals, moral injury. The whole like PTSD construct is sort of evolving in some ways, like especially like combat veterans and things like that, where it's like, how do I reconcile these?
Yeah.
What are normally, you can't,
people
you always hear about it in a PTSD side, like that, like when you do, we were talking about telling stories. One time I got liquored up somewhere and I was telling a story about this just heinous crime. This guy got burned up in a car, you know, and like the sensory depth of participating in that stuff, like the sight, smells, and just how disgusting it actually is. But like we tell a story, like it's ha funny. And the dude at the table behind me, it was like at a brewery in a different state, so that's cool. But I don't know why that matters. The guy at the table behind me, like retched. He didn't completely vomit, but he was eavesdropping on the story.
Yeah.
And whatever I said was visceral enough to him while he's eating his ribs or whatever that, like it wrecked him.
Yeah.
And he was upset at me, like for telling that story in a public space.
Yeah.
But we don't even think a second about it.
Mm-mm.
Not even a second about it. So the same thing with the moral injury stuff. Like how do you reconcile that on some level? To me, this is normal life, and to you, it's some awful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how often do you get a call from somebody who's like, "What's going on over here or over there or whatever?" And you're like, "I don't know. I'm at home." And they're like, "Yeah, but something important's going on." Yeah, I don't know. There's 700 other people going to handle this stuff, so you know.
Yeah.
But it's sort of the same about the bad things that happen. Like it was always surreal to go to work and do some odd thing on Saturday night, and then go to church on Sunday morning. Like, and just act like everything's the same for
Yeah.
that guy and this guy and this guy.
Yeah.
And you're like, huh, I'm still got to go clean my shoes off or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
No, I used to.
it's just kind of weird.
So I was a gang unit officer, and when my daughter started playing competitive like club softball, and then I started like coaching her team, and so I was like, shoot, how old was she? She was like 10, 11, 12, right in that range, like while I was in the gang unit, and I was coaching her her travel softball team. And so I would go at nighttime, I would go out and do all kinds of gang unit stuff with all my gang unit partners until 3, 4 in the morning, sometimes all night. And then I'd get up the next day. We'd have, practice the next morning on a Saturday, and I'd go out and I'm like interacting with a bunch of like 11-year-old girls,
Yeah.
and it's like the like you're talking about the difference between like turning it off from that night shift police officer life in a violent town, and then like hanging out with a bunch of kids and like being like the
Yeah.
softball coach with all these girls.
Yeah. So the way you describe it, like think about it like this. So you have this like social distinction, like a us versus them, social identity separation automatically.
Mhm.
And then you add to that the stress, moral injury, all those other things.
Yeah.
Right. And then you add to that the way you told that. I'd go work all night and then I'd get up and have to go coach these kids and whatever.
Yeah.
So you had like sleep deprivation,
Yeah.
sleep deprived. What is that?
Yeah,
Deprivation.
Deprivation.
Jeez,
Yeah.
man.
Polygrapher.
Polygrapher.
Hey, I got it right that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Sleep deprived.
Yeah.
Right. I had like a glitch in my matrix. That was weird. And then you have to go and act normal. Right.
Yeah.
Like that was always the thing to me is it's like now the older I get, and especially several years now on like normal hours with truthfully, the most moral injury I get at work is that people don't do what I want, or they're out of meatballs at the whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's not a big deal, but although admin work has its own stressors that are really weird.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. You were. But anyways, so you reflect on that, like how like on the edge you live your life, like a crackhead almost, or
Yes.
somebody on cocaine, like partying all the time.
Very much.
Like that's what it feels like now.
Yeah.
Looking back on like I was hanging on by a thread, like every bad financial decision, every bad personal decision, every bad social decision
Yeah.
was like stuck on this rocky foundation of the horseshit way we live our lives and think it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, you reflect on it in that way. I think that's why like people who go to admin jobs don't ever leave them because they can't go back.
That's true.
I think it's very hard. I know, like, forget staying up late and all the like obvious, relatively easy things. I would have a tremendously hard time. I probably could do it over a lot longer recovery period, but to go back to living like that, like sleep deprived, stay up all night, never do stuff, and then you add in like your family stressors. All my kids were young back then, so I told my daughter the other day she had to work a 12-hour shift, sitting with some guy at a hospital. Right?
Yeah.
She does like care for special needs people, so she hangs out with them,
Yeah.
helps them do their chores. So he had to go to the hospital. I'm not really sure for what, but probably shouldn't say even if I did know. But he had to go to the hospital. She had to sit with him, 12-hour shift. So she had college in there. She had like all these like normal person stressors.
Yeah.
And I don't remember she came home, she told me she had a tough day, 12 hours. And I said, I'm proud of you. You know, you work hard and you're growing a lot, right? Growing up very fast. But I told her now take your family to Disneyland at 8 in the morning tomorrow and act like it's all wonderful. And then drive home after that and go back to work the next day. And just like none of that ever changed. Like, dude, one of those things you think about it and you're like, I don't know how I've achieved the things that I've achieved.
How was it hanging on?
Yeah.
You had mentioned about how people go to admin jobs and they never want to go back.
Yeah.
And I've having gone to admin jobs and then going back, it's happened to me a couple of times. But I think that, I don't know what you think about this, is I got this like addict brain. I have addicts in my family, and I know that like if it weren't for certain factors
like
in my life,
compulsion or something.
no, just like I have an addictive personality, and if it weren't for like being married and having kids and having like responsibility and like the way that things turned out for me, I could have very well gone off the rails and just been a total
It's true of anyone though, no?
maybe.
Like you're grounded and have foundation.
Yeah, maybe, but I only know
But
me.
you're saying you would definitely
I
have
would
had a bad
definitely
outcome.
have.
I think that's true for me as well. I think I'm similar.
And so that addict brain brings me back a lot. So I got the get into the admin role, and there's like you said, there's other stressors that are there, right? But the desire to get back out there and to like go do that again is always
Yeah.
like kind of pulling me back.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I think that I get bored very easily,
Mm.
right? So like when I feel like patrol has nothing left to offer, it obviously always has something new to offer.
Yeah,
So it's kind of a false thing.
yeah,
But either way, like the monotony of it or whatever you want to call it, like you're like, okay, I'm over this. I
mm,
want to do something different.
yeah,
And I always tend to find hard things to do and then do them for a while until I don't think they're hard anymore. And then I go on to the next thing that I think is hard. But then you throw in like this whole construct of promotion and these things. Like there are things that I wish I had gotten better at or done longer
hmm,
that you can't because you promote or whatever. But um, ultimately, though, you get stuck in these positions and then you're like, I don't know if I could do that part again.
yeah,
But then on the same thing, like you said, you're kind of like structurally stuck, like in the mindset you had before or whatever. Like I would rather be doing that.
yeah.
So that's where you gravitate towards.
Yeah, well, I was just like, for me, it just kind of pulls me back. Like, I just want to get back. And, like, there's some monotony to like being a patrol, whatever,
Yeah.
officer, senior, supervisor. Never been a lieutenant, but
Oh,
like,
I'm sure there's monotony there.
yeah.
I've done it enough times, not very many, but
But
by an hour, I'm over it every time.
but no 2 days are really the same. Like the way what happens when you leave, you get in your car and you pull out of that parking
Yeah.
lot, and like that first call, that first thing that you get involved with, like you never know what's going to happen. And like,
Yeah, that's fair.
it's
There's always a different day,
it's a
different
different
script
day,
every day.
and it's
sure.
never boring. And another advantage too that you probably don't. I don't know if you think about this, but like it's like there nothing from yesterday carries over to today, and that's really nice. Like you don't have this project that you're working on.
You said you don't think about that.
Yeah, well, maybe
That's
you
what
do.
I long for.
Maybe you do. Yeah.
The only thing that I envy a patrol lieutenant for is that when they're done with that day, 99% of the time,
Yeah.
that's the end of that day.
It's done. Everything. Every day is a new day.
I have 59 things on my quote unquote to do / project list. Some of them are innocuous things, whatever.
Yeah.
Other ones are like solve poverty. You know what I mean? Like I'm looking at this problem and I'm like, okay, raise your hand if you know how to solve this, right? 1, 2, nobody.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you have the first inkling of how to approach this. It's one thing if we know what we're going to try to do, right? Okay, got nothing for that.
Yeah.
So, hey, come up with an innovative, novel solution that works for this problem. And then we have to acknowledge whether it's a real problem or not in the way we framed it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it's like every day, hey, did you solve that yet? Hey, did you solve that yet? Hey, is that thing solved yet? And then you do solve it, let's say, or you come up with something close enough to a solution that you can get away with not working on it anymore.
Yeah.
You know? And then the next guy is like, that's the worst solution ever. I hate that solution. Oh, what's your solution? Oh, I don't have one, but that one's trash, you know? It's its own odd stressors.
So those are the different stressors in the admin role.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, I guess when
the
you're in patrol,
politics, the
worst
way you
thing
have to interact with people, like all those things.
Yeah.
Like in patrol,
you might catch like a really hard report call that will take you like hours.
Yes.
Maybe the whole shift, but
that's today.
that's today. It's not tomorrow. But tomorrow it's gone.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas in my role, it's partly like complain about being an admin lieutenant. It sounds kind of funny. It also some of this is self-induced as well, probably. Yeah, self-destructive personalities in some ways, I guess. But like, not only do you have to do some things that can't be done, or they solve poverty, these unsolvable problems that whatever you do is going to make somebody angry, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of a black box deal. Okay. And not only do you have those dilemmas, but then you have like people who don't know how to even begin approaching what you're asking them to do.
Yeah.
So then you have to fill like this teacher role. So now you have to be the innovator and the teacher. And then on the back end, like because of the data side of the people that work for me, we also have to close the loop on everything too. So like we never get out of it. It's one thing to be the good idea fairy, and say, oh, I got a good idea, Nick, go do that. And then I'm not responsible for it anymore, right? It's like the classic command staff problem.
Yeah.
And we fly in and I walk in and I'm like, you know what?
Just shut a good
This is a
idea.
real thing and I want something done about it. And then just storm out.
And then leave.
No. And then it's worse because then the guy under that guy comes in and goes, I heard about that thing you're doing. Don't just do that, but make it Battleship Gray.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Yeah. And then they run out. And then the guy under that guy comes in and goes, I want to approve whatever it is that you're working on, Nick, because Nick's the doer here.
Yeah.
He's the only one doing anything. Right? So then he does all the work. He brings it. This guy has like a change because he's got to put a stamp on it.
Yeah, he's got to put some kind of
and
mark
then
on
that
it.
guy's the good idea for it is like, hey, this isn't Battleship Gray. This is mid-century Gothic Gray.
Yeah.
I don't like this.
Yeah.
And then, so then you go back and you work on it again.
Nardo
And then the
Gray.
first guy, huh?
Like I want to. It's like that phrase. There's too many chiefs, not enough Indians.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say that. I would say that this is the crux of that classic problem.
Oh,
and
okay.
I am not describing the group that I work with right now, actually. It's a very altruistic set of people, which is a unique experience. But I have been involved in this plenty of times in various organizations and here. This guy's got to stamp it, right? And then that guy's got to stamp it. And they got to be able to point to something that they influenced in that work because otherwise it's not their work. It's just Nick's work.
Yeah.
Right. So there's like this, I need to touch it in some way so I can, and whether they intend to take credit for it or it's just some psychological thing on their part that I have ownership of this now. I did my job because it's Battleship Gray or whatever. I don't really know the answer to that. I've grappled with that at times.
I see that in the physical world when every time there's a shift in like division level shift of like who's in charge of what, there's always a remodel in the building. You ever notice that? Like
At the divisional level.
Like when there's the divisional level shift, the physical floor plan will change every time. Every time.
I think that's okay.
Tell me I'm wrong.
I don't know if that's true. I'd have to see it on some paper to believe it, but I could see where that is true. But I would
Imagine
say
the way
that
the office looks now, and the way it looked 2 years ago, and the way it looked 4 years.
Which
before
office?
That. Any of them.
Any of
Pick them. Pick one.
Yeah, records.
Yeah.
From first floor to second.
How many different configurations have they?
Yeah,
how
I
many
would say
walls
that
have
that's
they
more of
knocked
a
down
product
and
of the
added?
timing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I work inside the belly of the beast. So like I'm thinking through what you're saying and I can see why you think that. And I think some of that's true, right? Like I took down, there's a wall in the middle of one of my offices, right? So I don't even want to talk about this, but I don't care. 2014, I got demoted, right? 2015, I got demoted.
You bounce back. It's
failed to pass probation, right? That's sort of what we were talking about before the thing too, like whole different animal sometimes based on your perspective at different times of the career. But there's this wall that got put up in like 2014 to create like this division in this big bay in there, right? So before that, it was just one big room and it was a big table in the middle of it. And like, that's like the place that I think of when I think of the homicide unit, right? I mean, from when you start here and you're afraid to go up there to when you're working there, like that's what you imagine doing. And then they would put up that wall and then they put up the situation room thing in the middle of all that. That was supposed to be like a lunch room or something.
Yep.
But it never like materialized. So neither the wall nor the situation room. This is one of the reasons I actually accepted the idea that admin work might be where I belong right now. This is a true story. So when I got demoted, the captain that was responsible for all of that stuff, right, made the decision to demote me, right? I maintain to this day, it wasn't a fair decision. It was poorly executed. I own some of things that happened during that time, but I can assure you that in the modern age, none of that would have gone on the way that it did. Oh my gosh. So either way, it was a bloodbath for me personally, emotionally traumatizing.
Yeah.
So whoever you are, there you go. You win. You won that round. But when I got that office back as part of the units that I run, I tore that wall down immediately.
Well,
it was unnecessary. I would say it's unnecessary. I believe in an open floor plan workspace, right? I believe that for teams to collaborate, that they need to be able to communicate. And they need to be able to communicate non-visually as well as visually. So for instance, if you're in your cubicle and I say, hey, can you help me? You say, no, I'm busy. I don't know if that's true. right? Whereas if I can see you and I say, can you help me? You have to answer me eye to eye, right? Yeah. And I also believe that people need the room to be good at what they are good at, and that what you're good at is not what I'm good at. But working together, we can be good at a lot of things together, bringing what we bring to the table. It's not possible in a closed off workspace, right? Even if there's just two of us in the room, what happens is we become a good team. Everyone else does not, right? Nobody gets the benefits. Same with like these guys that are out for themselves or whatever, historically. You have like your thing that you want to do, right? And you're very good at it, but you have other qualities that you deprive the rest of the team, the global team of, by not participating because you just want to be into your own thing, right? I think that a lot of these teams, so a lot of people that wind up disgruntled about their experience with managers and things like that, they bear responsibility in those things, right? Because you're not participating, you're not testing, you're not doing those things. So you're depriving what could be a lot better management structure because of the talents and skills that you might bring to the table. Particularly the things that like these habitual doers rely on, like integrity and independence and all these other things, like independent thought, and I'm not gonna bow down for the man or whatevs, you know? Like, okay, I agree with all of those things, but those qualities, they don't tend to rise to the top, right? So it's possible for you to have, I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I think that historically, this organization, not so much. I mean, I'm a perfect example of it. Historically, outliers, disruptors, people that have strong opinions about things and can support them. So there's a significant difference, right? Like if I can come at you and I'm prepared to have a intellectual debate, I'm educated, I've read about it, I've done the research, I know what I'm talking about, and I have strong feelings that you're doing something that could be done better. I think that historically, like ego gets in the way of everything. People don't want to be told from their subordinates there's a better way to do things. Here's another one you don't think about. We work exclusively in a negative. I say you don't think. I just did what you did to me. You don't think about it. I know for a fact, we work exclusively in a negative risk environment, right? Risk taking, innovative problem solving, attempting to try something new. If they don't work out, it's seen as like a catastrophic failure historically, right? And not only by your bosses. So for instance, if I go out and I say, I got this great idea for crime reduction strategy, right? And here's how I know it's going to work. Here's how it works these other places. And we implement that and it fails, right? It's not just my bosses that are like, oh, you didn't get it done, right? In this organization, because we're sort of adapted to this fail forward model. You like that? We fail a lot at a lot of things, which means we necessarily get better at things, even incrementally, right?
Okay.
That's a healthy approach to problem solving, right?
You made it. Sorry, you made a mention about like the ego getting in the way. I see that a lot, but
I didn't finish my negative risk thing.
Okay, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Sorry, no,
I'm just fucking with you.
Was it
the ego?
The ego.
No, the middle of his sentence interrupted the beginning of mine.
Yeah.
No,
I can't believe this guy keeps interrupting us. You have a lot more important things to say.
You say that nobody likes to be, or certain times people, they don't like to be told by their subordinates that they're messing up, they're doing something wrong. I mean,
and
like I
especially if
see
you're
that.
a big cheese.
Well, I see that, but like that's so counterproductive to like actually solving a problem. And I'm the complete opposite. It's like I always look at my guys and like, hey, if I'm seeing this, if I'm doing this wrong, please let me know. But or if you see this a different way, let me know. We'll kind of tabletop it together, and we're all on the same page before we go forward. And like I want to know if I'm fucking up, because I don't want this in real life to get fucked up. Like, so I want to.
Okay, where did you learn that though?
I don't know.
Is that a learned behavior or an instinctive one?
I think I learned it through watching people not do it, largely. And
so in the military, you didn't have like a collaborative environment. At least in the small team level.
Small team level, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little bit here and there.
I would say the same. Like I was on tank crews, right? So like very collaborative environment at all times. And like hostile at times towards each other, but very like accountability driven, performance driven.
Well, and a tank crew is real specific because like if one guy isn't pulling their weight, then it
Yeah.
affects all of you in a real like obvious fashion. Like if you're driving the tank fucked up and I'm running the turret, like it's going to
it's a
affect
tough
me if
situation.
you're not doing that
I'd
right.
probably lose some teeth if I'm not doing it right too. But in like this, okay, so my point I think I'm trying to make is that is not a common approach to leadership. That's the approach that I take. I want to be proven wrong at all times, right?
I think it's becoming
I say
more
fail
common.
forward. There's a bunch of famous people that talk about these things, but fail early, fail often, fail forward, right? But one of the points of failure is what was my plan, my approach, all these other things. If I'm willing to fail forward, that just means I want to learn from what wasn't going right. Very often I find that it's my idea that's the problem, right? So I've developed like a culture in the 2 units that I run, at least I've tried to develop a culture that everyone has the same voice when it comes to doing the work. And that if I have a bad idea, I expect to know about it. If I'm asking you to do something you can't do, I expect to know about it. If I'm asking you to do something that's not reasonable or you have a better plan, and I've turned loose people, it's sort of a terrifying environment for some of the people who work for me historically, because I just turn loose of you. I tell you, this is the end state we're desiring. This is how I would approach it, maybe. I'm not good at explaining that because it all kind of lives in this mess of my head a lot of the time. And then I just let them go, right? So for me, that's like the perfect scenario. Just tell me what you want it to look like, and I'll go and figure it out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I have had to adapt the way I lead people because for policemen, especially police officers that don't have like that innovative left brain, whatever it is, side of like,
Yeah. The creativity.
yeah,
side.
the connecting all these dots to make it into a thing, right? Without an instruction manual, they struggle, right?
Yeah.
And not only just not accomplish stuff, but like have meltdowns over it. Like they can't build the construct in their head, so it becomes very disordered for them.
But what
Very
you do in
chaotic
the administrative
experience.
function, where like where you're at now, compared to like what your day looks like when you show up to work, compared to what your day looked like 23 years ago when you showed up to work.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
like
you're not
what
wrong.
you're
That's
actually
the
doing.
challenge, right? Is to
Yeah.
connect the okay. This is what you asked what QAU does, right? QAU tries very much to limit the impact of accountability and oversight to the experience of the patrol officer, right? So, like, if you go to some agencies, especially some of the challenges we're dealing with the stipulated judgment that are in the same boat, what you would find is like the patrolman's responsible for everything.
Okay.
So, like, you have to write a report, you have to fill out this form, you have to fill out this form, you have to fill out that form, and then you have to like testify under oath into this camera at the end of your day about this thing or that thing, right? It's so stifling for you to do your job, right? Recognizing that because I've done a lot of operations work over the years. When I got involved in this stuff, like it became sort of my personal thing to like make sure it has the lightest footprint. Can't make all of it not happen.
Yeah.
Right. The world has changed in a lot of ways. So we try to now though make it have as light a footprint as we can so that for a patrolman, for the most part, they go to their calls, they handle their stuff, they do the right thing the right way for the right reasons in every context. And which is not always possible, but right. But
Do you remove things like, I think of it like at a government level, like removing regulation? Do you remove like tasks or responsibilities? Or
we
take
try.
things off of
What we
them?
try to do is automate them, that you don't experience it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or what the experience is simple, like click a button, fill out 2 more boxes on this thing.
Yeah, like the app for RIPAs.
Yeah. We changed it, right? So if you were to look at what is required by the stipulated judgment, if you were to look at like to the letter what's required, the easiest way for me to get what I need is to have you write a report for every stop, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. I would never do that, right? Like the easiest way is would I do it? And I didn't follow all the rules all the time for the right reasons. If I'm not doing it, nobody's going to do it.
Yeah.
You know? And I wouldn't expect them to. So like that's a good example is that we started collecting extra data. You have to do that thing anyway. So if we can add 2 or 3 minutes of information to that, and here's the kicker though, we have to get good stuff coming back to us. then we don't have to take some drastic step for that thing to become a whole deal. You have to write a whole report for every stop. We to develop that though, like for as an example, like the lengths that I go to
develop the software or the app, is that what you're talking about?
What's that?
To develop
to develop the approach and to get the app. I don't know if you remember the way we used to collect that stuff, but it was trash, right?
Yeah, the first one, the website was garbage.
Yeah, it's the state's run thing.
Yeah.
It's not developed very well. It's not user friendly. It's very basic. They might have improved it. This is back when, but
yeah,
a few years ago. But we recognize that if we're expecting you, this is a systems thinking concept. If you expect people to use a system, the system has to be usable, right? Simple. It seems it's kind of dumb, like very elementary.
Yeah.
But like it's not the people necessarily, it's the system that's not good, right? So we went and did some research, developed some structure around like what is acceptable statewide. So like Cal DOJ has its opinions about and what the regulations say and what the data says, right? But what is the compliance rate statewide? Nobody knows, right? So then we did some research, try to understand what other agencies are grappling with compared to what we're dealing with, and how to really understand what we're up against in a few broad categories there. And then we started looking for a tool, found the right tool. And by right, I mean that I went to, I think, two or three departments that were using it, talked to the people that do their version of what I do. And at two of them, though, I ran into motor cops for that organization. Once you're a motor cop, you're always a motor cop. You know what I mean? So I went and started shooting the shit with those guys, whether they're smoking cigarettes, and asking them about it. And if these guys are who all they do is do RIPAs, if you think about it, right? Traffic cop, you just go to a stop, make a stop, write a ticket, write a RIPA, right?
Yeah.
The fact that people still get tickets is crazy to me. Just the way that it's designed, it's kind of sucks compared to the way things used to be. It's the world these guys are grappling with, guys and gals.
Yeah.
Sucks. So we try to make it as simple as possible. So these motor cops are able to do those forms in like 2 minutes accurately. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't really affect my day at all. Well, okay, I could talk to other people using the tool that we have, and they're like, I just spent 3 hours trying to get this stuff put in, and it still didn't work.
We're saying 2 minutes. So this
From
is
start to finish, filling out the form.
Yeah. And so RIPA, what does RIPA stand for? It's the
Racial Identity Profiling Out.
Yeah. And so we have to, in California, every time we detain somebody, we have to fill out.
I guess your audience isn't necessarily only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in California, we have to fill out a little report explaining what we perceive the person's like racial identity and gender and
race, gender, sexual orientation, things like that.
Yeah,
And
before they were detained.
Well, yeah, and if you have to do it not every stop or not every contact, but if there's a detention or if there's a search or an arrest, right?
Yeah, and it's what your perception was at the time that you made the detention, correct?
Yeah, or before.
Or just before, prior to making it.
Right. The way it's written is kind of wonky, but ultimately your perception can be derived at any time.
Yeah,
so it's sort of
a self-reporting system too. So this is the thing when it came out first. I was like, because I thought about if I was a patrolman again,
and it's anonymized, so you can't like cross-reference data there.
Yeah.
So it gets tricky, like the no context in there.
Yeah, and I thought like, well, what would I do? And I would. This is just the way my brain works. Is if I was a patrolman and I was required to fill out this form, and like you said, it's anonymized and it's my perception at the time. No one can tell me what my perception is.
Or if you had one.
So I can just put whatever I want on there and no one can say whether it's right or wrong because it's my perception. Yeah, and so I would probably just click the very first box that comes up on each and every box so that I could streamline my way through it.
Yeah, just to get through it fast.
I'm not suggesting that someone do this, but I mean, like, what is my incentive to do it?
Maybe that's what was happening. And you have to look it up yourself because I didn't fact check this. This was
all you check
anecdotally told to me that some agency down south put like everybody as an American Eskimo.
Yes.
Right? So maybe that's what you're talking about.
I used to joke that I would just make everyone a transgender Pacific Islander or whatever.
Yeah.
Because like, what are you going to tell me like that I perceived them to be that way?
Right. So some of the stuff that we did to try to combat that narrative, I wouldn't even say combat that narrative. Here's the thing about data, right? Mm-hmm. You can take data and you can say a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Some of them are true. right?
Yeah.
And a lot of them are narrative driven, and they're used to support narratives that are unhealthy,
Exactly.
inaccurate, that don't tell the truth about what's going on.
And the
right?
premise of RIPA is to support a narrative.
I won't say that.
Yeah, we won't get into that. Never
I
mind.
won't say that. What I would say is that it's a law we have to comply with.
Correct.
Whether I agree with the premise or not, it's not
We
relevant.
don't have to get into the premise.
Yeah. But what I would tell you is that the tool, we built this tool, or we bought the tool, and then we built it out to answer some other questions. So one of the questions we ask is, did you know the race before you made the stop?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there could be an argument made that like you just say that every time. But here's the other part about racial profiling. Like if you're criminally racially profiling people,
Yeah.
there's 100 other ways we can know than this form.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like, even if you're saying that, like that's not how it's anonymized anyways. Theoretically, that's not supposed to be used against you.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know that there's a legal standard for that, but either way, we want to know internally as part of the way that we understand our narrative, if you could know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because how many traffic stops you guys made? I've made somewhere in the neighborhood, like just on traffic, 17,000 or something,
Yeah.
right? 15,000, 10,000. It's still a huge number, hyperbolic or not, right?
Yeah.
I can genuinely say with no qualification, you can hook me up to the polygrapher right now. And I would say 10% of them, all the traffic stops I've ever made that were not deliberately investigated for some reason, I could care less who was driving the car. Right? Like it had bore no fact. Whether I could or couldn't perceive them, I mean, it's hard to know.
Well, especially as a traffic officer, like that doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're looking at
at all. You're looking for
limit lines and
vehicle code
seatbelt
violation.
stuff.
Vehicle code
I
violations.
can genuinely tell you, I've pulled over thousands of people for seatbelt violations. Where if you were to ask me to tell you what they looked like before I got to the window, I have no idea, because all I saw was the seatbelt wasn't clipped, and then had to worry about getting back behind it, make a traffic stop, all that other stuff. Like if they ran away, I'd be like, I don't know who that was. I couldn't tell you to save my life.
Because you're looking at the B pillar where the seatbelt is,
Correct.
seeing that the seatbelt is not in the fastened position.
But for whatever reason, like the way that the RIPA statute is framed and the way that the reports are framed and the way people tend to talk about it outside of our industry, that you can perceive that at all times and that it is obvious to everyone.
And that the officer would self-report that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So hypothetically, if I was criminally racially
Yeah.
profiling it, do you think I would
You wouldn't
self-report
do
that
it
I
on
was doing
purpose.
that?
Right.
Like I have to fill out this form every time. I'd probably mix it up. You know what I mean? Because it's my perception. So if I'm
Yeah.
actually criminally racially profiling, I'm just stopping,
Right.
one particular racial group because I really hate them. I'm not going to put on my form every time that I'm doing that. I'm going to I'm going to mix it up. So the data, in my opinion, is just, it's kind of silly.
Yeah. Well, it's probably the only way you could academically collect this information, to be fair. Right. That said, I don't like how it's being used, the data. And we genuinely want to know, could you not perceive the race? Like, it's not a loaded question. It's intended to understand the narrative better when narratives that challenge what we believe we're doing.
Yeah.
Right. So you get somebody says, oh, look, in 90% of these stops, you only did this, you only did that. Speaking in these like sort of absolutist terms. That's fair. But in 85% of our global stops, and if we want to slice it the way you sliced it, 75, 100% of the ones that you said we only stopped these people, we didn't even know who they were.
Yeah.
Right? We self-reported that. So then the argument is, well, you could lie when you self-report. Correct. I could lie when I self-report. I could also lie
about the race,
about everything that I said in the first
thing.
place.
And there's no way to confirm one way or the other.
Right. And then what we did was to limit having to write a whole report with a narrative and all these other things. We streamlined what we need. We only collect the things that we need. We strip out of the state's data what we can use. And then we have you fill out like these 3 extra things with short answers that help us determine what we need to know to report on it and then maintain and develop compliance and whatever.
Yeah.
The patrolmen I think they think that like there's no thought that goes into that. We went to New York City for 4 days because they use a similar approach that's lower tech to doing this. So I went and learned everything I could from the biggest police department that has the same problem, because if they can do it for 50,000 cops, 40,000 cops, whatever the number is.
Yeah.
And do it well enough to get some version of compliance within their own kind of similar problem, then why not take that and figure out a way to use it? So then we married it to the Veritone app. So you're only having to do the one thing you had to do anyways. It lessens the impact on your approach, your day, your feelings about it. That's the goal.
Yeah, and like the workload. And one of the things that I used to, complain about when a new system would come in online or a new form that's got to be filled out, I would say like, hey, we're creating extra work, and I'm not even talking about RIPA specifically.
No, I know what you're saying. It is extra work. You're adding to the physical load of how much stuff we can use.
Yeah, and the pushback I would always hear is like, well, it's not that much. It's this is only going to take them 5 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Death of 1,000 cuts, right?
I'm like, okay, well that's cool, but the last time, 2 months ago we had another one, and 5 months before that, and 8 months before that, and a year before that, and like pretty soon, like your day is spent a great portion of your day is spent doing these things, or like
just administrative tasks.
And you made the comment of like, oh, these guys can get that form knocked out in 2 minutes. It's like, okay, well, you were a traffic motor cop. You write 20 tickets in a day, commonly, right?
Yeah, 15 I would say is more common than 20, but yeah.
Well, okay, then 15.
10 to 15 to 20, somewhere in that range.
Well, if you write 15 a day and you spend 2 minutes on every stop on a Veritone form, that's half an hour of your day.
Yeah, but can I push back slightly on that particular premise?
Sure.
So if I wrote 20 tickets and it took me 4 minutes, right? Per deal, it's 80 minutes of labor that I have to do, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll even throw in like, we didn't have it then, so maybe it's fair, maybe it's not. Body worn camera tagging and all these other things. There's another 20, 30 minutes.
Yep.
Plus driving from here to there to do evidence and gas and whatever.
Yep.
Right? You could say I probably would spend in that job 2 hours a day doing administrative stuff
that aren't even related to actually.
That aren't related at all to my actual execution of the job.
Yes, enforcing traffic violations.
Yeah, but I can also say that there were plenty of time, even on a very, very busy day, or where you write 20, 25 tickets, to go have 4 breaks and hang out with the boys at every call for 25 minutes too. Right? So, I mean, there's that, and go to dinner every night. Like the traffic guys have it good.
No, yeah.
But for this is where it gets tricky. For a patrolman, like if you average everybody out, which is not fair per se, so you do like medians and stuff, you try to get like a number you can base things on. I have calculated somewhere. I say I have people that do this. I don't do any of it. The Royal We, have decided that it takes somewhere between 90 minutes and 2 hours to do all the admin work we ask people to do outside of driving to the jails and things like this, right?
Per day?
Per day. 90 minutes a day. What? Are you writing that down? You going to
No, this is different.
make me sign it or something?
No.
So
you heard it here first, folks.
I was thinking about a meme video that he wrote, but that's what I'm writing it down about.
Oh,
Keep
okay.
talking, yeah.
I want to hear this. So all these videos, all these tasks that we fully recognize that they influence how you do your job. So when
second briefing, we're going to get into it later.
Second briefing.
Oh, okay. I want to hear about it.
This is just
No, that's good. Just yesterday.
So you say 90 minutes of tasks. You're not talking about like I take a report call and I'm writing my report.
No. That's not a factor. I'm talking about that the department requires you to do administratively every day. So tag your video, do your RIPA stuff, do your proper evidence stuff.
And you're saying that that's
all
not
that stuff.
that even on a busy day, an officer's going to find some carve out some section of time to kind of like.
I mean, wouldn't you as a supervisor expect them to?
So that was going to be my pushback to you. Is
I
do expect them to actually carve out a little bit of time to kind of like decompress.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
so like my expectation would be from just because of the experience, I guess, right? Is like the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes of your day, the last 45 minutes, 90 minutes of your day is kind of admin stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Like generally. Or not getting wrapped up in something else so you have to stay late or whatever.
Trying to dodge that call.
Unless you're the overtime guy, which I still want to talk about overtime. I have questions.
Okay.
Or I have an observation and some questions.
I'll make sure we do.
But now I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. So you have all this time that you're dealing with, right? I would expect that your work day, the work I'm asking you to do, Not that you're volunteering to do, not that you're being extra conscientious about, because that's a personal choice in a lot of ways, right?
For sure.
We work to minimum standards. This is the minimum standard, and we have a finite work schedule. This to this. I would expect all of the work that we've asked you to do from an administrative perspective and all of the calls and paperwork and everything else fit into that day, recognizing that we now have compressed the amount of time you can be quote unquote productive.
Yeah.
Right. And everything that we add compresses it a little more.
Yep.
So like what we've done largely is we've put that burden on the sergeants and the lieutenants, the middle management, supervisory and middle management, for handling the parts of those tasks that need to be handled. The reasoning for that is that while you can argue however you want to how a supervisor spends their days, what's appropriate, what's not, right? They have way more discretionary time.
Sorry, you're saying you put some of that on the supervisor to take. In what way? Can you give an example?
Yeah. So like, take a blue team, for instance, right? All of that paperwork relies on the supervisor.
Yeah.
Right. All of the inspections and stuff and speed stuff and like all of these tools that we require people to look at. Like in most organizations, body-worn camera inspections are done at the supervisor level.
Yeah.
Right. We require them at the lieutenant level largely because the supervisors have enough problems. Right. We don't want them being overburdened with administrative tasks. So we try to get them out doing supervisory stuff.
So you're taking that off the sergeant. So
the sergeants put it on the lieutenants, but then at the same is true in some ways from the patrolman to the supervisor.
Sergeant. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, I kind of know what you do because you said blue team. Blue team is a use of force incident report, and some agencies have the officers actually fill those up.
Well, we're going to start doing that pretty soon.
Oh, okay.
In some certain circumstances, the officer will do their own.
So one more little thing.
Well, it is one more little thing, but this is what you have to balance, right? Yeah. We can argue about the validity, the approach, the scope, all those things. The reality is like what's necessary versus what is not. In the stipulated judgment, there are certain things that are necessary. And in order to have a supervisor do that, it's impossible. It's physically impossible, right? So for instance, every time you point your gun at somebody, the judgment says we have to do a blue team.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, that means if we do it in the construct that we have now, that a sergeant would drive over there, talk to all the people, do all the stuff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
All the rigmarole. Yeah.
All the rigmarole. It's a very labor-intensive thing. Now multiply that by 300 people, or one call where there's 22 people who wind up pointing their gun at somebody, right?
Yeah.
Do we expect the supervisors to? That would be all they're doing, bouncing over these things, right?
Yes.
And then you add like, we want them supervising dangerous situations. So then they'd be, who's doing this blue team if these guys are dealing with the CIT stuff or whatever, right? Like it becomes the same thing, a thing about workload management, expectations, performance, and all these other little capacity, all these other little nuanced things that add to the complexity. And then, so by pushing the actual blue team of some of that lowest level stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, and it actually eliminates a fair number of responsibilities for sergeants because the lowest level of force, pushing somebody down with no injury, for instance, how many of those do you have to do a blue team on, right? They'll be self-reported by the copper instead of the supervisor having to go do all the stuff. Yeah. It's just, it becomes this like juggling thing of where does it land best and where does it fit best? Some things that are necessary, we can argue about their validity all day long. It's moot for us because it's not something we want to do necessarily. Or even if we do want to do it in a different way, kind of stuck doing it a certain way. So it kind of gets stuck there, you know?
So is the amount of work that the officer would do on pointing their gun at somebody, blue team, like a lower level of what the sergeant would have to do?
Yeah, because all they're doing is putting their stuff in blue team. They're not making a determination on it, right? So it's essentially the synopsis of the report, right? I mean, you've done these things. Yeah. And then all of the facts and circumstances and then out. So it's not so hard.
Okay.
It's not like they're doing the interviews and all these other things.
Well, I think about that just from, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just putting more information in the system, basically.
And I think back to...
It's like self-reporting your use of force.
Here's some self-reporting. I think about the way my mind works, and especially as a patrolman, and like the fear I have for doing that, and this isn't necessarily an argument against it, but this is what comes to mind is like, if I'm a patrol officer and I'm in a situation where I could or could not, kind of borderline case, bring my gun out to point it for this
Yeah.
scenario. If I know that at the end of this, I'm going to have to spend
You're not going to do it.
X amount of
know.
time working on and doing this report when I could be doing something else, be it another call, another stop, or just shooting the shit with the boys, something else I could be doing with that time. Is that edge case going to push me? Is that requirement going to push me to the side of not pulling my gun when maybe I should have?
Okay.
And I can tell you with the way my mind would have worked about 12, 15 years ago is that there would be absolutely some cases where I would not, because I'm like, do I really have to do that? No, I don't want to do that. No, I'm good. I don't need that gun.
Oh, I'm 100% in the same boat.
And
I would work around these rules all day long.
Yeah.
15, 20 years ago. That being said,
in addition to having an addict mind, I have a criminal mind. That I think things in a criminal way. And like, how do I get out of doing that?
Well, mine's just as bad because I want to solve systems, right? So like my brain wants to defeat your system no matter what it is and make it my own.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes it makes it more efficient and easy to deal with. Sometimes it's just like outright insolence or whatever. So,
so my fear is the officer safety issue that might be generated. I disagree with you.
It's this thing that I wish I could say like that hasn't been. Oh, we never thought about that. Of course, it's something that's thought about every time. The goal then becomes like try not to split hairs. Try not to make it so difficult for people to do that they won't do it.
Yeah.
And try to make it where it's you hear me talk all the time about reflection, try to make it more of a reflective practice about, okay, so I do have to do this, but why am I doing it? You know what I mean? Like I probably didn't explain that very well, but if you're on if you recognize the problem for what it is and you're altruistic about arriving at the same place that you want to go, right? Then do we want to do stuff like this under mandate, or do we want to have self-determinative ability? Do we want to be able to self-determinate whether we should or shouldn't do something in our policies, right? Like, do we want to be able to do that, or do we not want to be able to do that?
Well, yeah, we obviously want to be.
We want to be able to make our own decisions, right? So sometimes these things are like they're pragmatic at best. Some of them. I'm not saying that one. The pointing guns at people is a relatively important thing.
Yeah.
In context, it's a relatively important thing. But some of the stuff, man, like, would we choose some of these things for ourselves? Probably not.
Yeah.
Especially not in the way that we're kind of stuck doing them. So it's always a challenge.
I just think about, I've had instances like when I was a VCAT officer, as an officer, not a supervisor, but a carjacking suspect that we were taking down. And as we were taking him down, he actively carjacked someone right in front of us. And I had a rifle out and I was pointing the rifle at him, just digging under the seat, thinking he was going to pull a gun. And I had clicked off safe and I was finger on the trigger and I was about to pull the trigger and flashed through my mind. This is just, tree of trust and being honest.
Yeah.
We had a couple of guys who had been in a shooting.
You, me, and the whole world.
Yeah. Just a couple of us. We have tens of listeners. That there was a couple of guys in our unit who had been in a shooting recently, or maybe it had been a while, and they were off for a long time, like almost a year that they were put on modified duty. And that actually flashed in my mind as I was about to pull the trigger. Do I want to be off work for the next year, sitting in the comm center or sitting wherever?
Yeah, twiddling my thumbs
because of
feeling
this.
like I did something wrong. That whole thing.
Now, ultimately, I didn't allow that to affect. Wasn't involved in the shooting. I didn't pull the trigger, but it got close. But I'm saying is that was actually running through my mind. I remember distinctly that thought popping into my head in this moment, and I don't want that sort of thought process happening for other people. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
If I'm in the moment of whether I should point a gun or should not point a gun, I don't want it flashing in my mind like, do I really want to have to do that report
right
or not?
Well, and okay, so would that happen anyways? Like, what's the other version of the worst case scenario? Like, forget the shooting part. Like, obviously that's the worst case scenario, but what if there's another narrative you've created for yourself that would prevent you from doing the same thing? What if it's like, oh, I'm going to have to go to the shooting review board or do this thing or that thing, right? Like it's
the negative
it's
outcome
sort of a narrative driven thing about what the negative outcome will be.
And the negative outcome in that scenario was specifically that we had an inefficiency within our agency that forced officers to be off for like extended periods of time, which was like hard on them.
Yep.
When we could have been more efficient in getting them back to work. And so like, whether or not the shooting is like it's justified shooting, but their process for getting it determined and getting them back was inefficient. And I knew that. And that was playing in my head is like, do I want to be stuck in that position for this amount of time? And again, I didn't allow that to affect my decision making, but it did pop into my head in the moment. And I just remember that happening.
So when you talk about QAU, what does it do, right? One of the things that QAU has done over the last several years is work on that particular problem, right? About these inefficiencies and how things are executed and when decisions are made, and particularly related to critical incidents and stuff, like how they're made, when they're made, what the approach is.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't think anybody in the police administration takes credit for a thing because everybody stamps it,
Yeah.
But I worked for a long time. My team worked for a long time on developing frameworks that make sense in this area.
Yeah.
And you've seen it now. I mean, guys are going tonight in a few weeks sometimes.
You have a
few days.
72-hour debrief. And
Yeah, we do the
debrief.
command briefing, and then we do kind of the update to make sure everything didn't change from what it was, or if it did change, what the outcome might be.
Yeah.
And,
to
then,
your
and
credit,
then they make a decision, right? Like,
yeah,
it's gotten so much better, at least from my perspective,
Absolutely,
as far as how it's done.
like I said, to your credit or to the credit of whoever put their stamp on it above.
I mean,
you,
ultimately, it's
the
the big chief. Big chief's the one who made the decision, but yeah.
The process has been streamlined a lot more than it was at that time.
Yeah, I still don't think it's perfect. I still think there's things we got to get better at. But what I like about it now is it's not just about the incident, right? So like it's very much about what happened and the legality of it and the appropriateness and all those things, the way that it's sort of designed to be, for sure. But there's these elements of like continuous improvement that go into it, where there's like a true after action. There's a true effort to understand the whole situation and what caused it, everything from staffing to scheduling to the radio towers, and like there are incremental improvements being made all over the place about things that are very risky to how we do business. That some of them known, some of them unknown, some of them developing over time, and it's very much that process and how it's being approached that drives that. And that's QAU's been involved in that from the beginning and continues in a lot of ways of driving the closing of the loops of the progress, right, or of the improvement. So this thing needs to be worked on. Okay, let's sprinkle a good idea. Let's work on that thing.
Yeah.
And then everybody forgets about it and we don't fiddle with it anymore, right? Well, we provide some structure to that so that when things don't go right, which they never do, right? I mean, as long as everybody goes home and went right enough.
Not necessarily.
Okay, fair. Yeah. You're giving me an ugly smile. I don't like it. When things go bad, how do we deal with it so we can prevent something like that in the future? If we can, depending on what it is. Some of them are incremental, stupid things, like where's the keys to this thing?
Yeah.
Or the thing for that thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it seems like a silly problem for a police department to have. Like, but in all honesty, what I have learned dealing with police departments all over this country, that all, like, your agency might do this and this really cool, and it's like your figurehead on the front of your battleship, right? Like, look at all this cool shit we do. And then, like, if you spend any amount of time with them, you'll also find out, like, you do what? How do you get away with doing that? I don't understand that at all. And like, you're very forward thinking in this area and very regressive in this other area.
Yeah.
And like, shocking to me. So like, every time I start to feel bad about my place and like the various things that go wrong, and like
you
scratch my head and bang my head against the wall.
The dumb thing the other group does.
Yeah. And I'm like, I guarantee you somebody else lost their keys to their thing.
Yeah.
Like I guarantee you that happened.
Our guys were they were working with some guys in a different state, different agency, and they were saying, hey, on every violent felony, their apprehension team, they do a flashbang deployment and immediately send the dog. And we're like, what? Like, like, there's no steps between that? Like, oh, no, there's case law that supports it. And we're like, well, we're not going to be doing that.
Yeah. And that's the thing, man. What other people find risky, we're fine with. And what we find risky, other people are fine with.
Yeah.
And like, when you start this, I tell people all the time, one of the things that the units do in both units, crime analysis and QA, they turn over rocks. And like, when you turn over a rock, sometimes you're surprised by what's underneath it. Sometimes it's just a bunch of roly-polies or whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a scorpion with those roly-polies, you know. Whenever you turn over anyone's rocks, it's like opening their closet, man. You never know what you're going to find. Like they can have the best looking annual report in the world or brochure or coolest uniforms, and it's a mess inside, and vice versa. Like I would say we're just like everyone else. We're not any better, we're not any worse. I think that our leadership is uniquely positioned to do some really cool stuff over the next quote unquote generation of leaders. And there's a few police departments that I'm aware of that are in similar situations, but maybe more advanced than we are. And they're doing some cool stuff, and they're very reflective and thoughtful, but they still get after it really, really hard, which I think is the goal, right?
Yes.
When we talk about the judgment, everybody seems to think that our goal is to like do the judgment, get it done. This is what we're doing, like very rigidly. We're very thoughtful, very inquisitive. We try very hard to not do anything we don't have to do. With it, that's reasonable, right? Like there's things that we don't have to do that are reasonable, that make sense. They're good practice. We do those. But we're very thoughtful about what the changes are going to be and how they're going to be implemented for a lot of reasons. But what it becomes is that people think like this is all you're focused on. Our organization has taken the position from the beginning of the judgment that the judgment is important. We agree to do it. We are doing it, et cetera. But also our global goal is to be the best police department in the Valley. So, and we kind of try to stick to that vision instead of go off on this rabbit hole related to the judgment or whatever. So it's a lot, dude. It's a ton.
What are some misconceptions
that
you think that well, maybe Nick can chime in if you have something, but like that, like a frontline officer has about what quality assurance does versus what?
Yeah. So I think it's gotten like, because of the timing was terrible because of COVID or whatever. We wound up, because there's a special project, right? Mm-hmm. And we had unique abilities to do some of the data stuff, especially, and leverage kind of the tools available at the time that had to be required to manage the pandemic. Whether or not how everyone feels about all of the pandemic controls and all that.
I got some feelings.
Oh, I bet you do. As a matter of fact, I know most of them. What we try to do the same thing through the pandemic. There are things that we don't control. We try to have to make the best of, right? And we try to make them as simple as possible, as practical as possible, as easy as possible. And in the pandemic specifically, it was ugly. Like there's no way to make some of that stuff make sense, right? As is becoming proven now. So like you just are, at the end of the day, you're just like, look, it's the thing you got to do. Whether you agree with it or not, the philosophical part doesn't factor. It's just a thing we got to handle. So there's some of that. And then you get into like after the pandemic, some like the early intervention type stuff and the way stuff gets branded by line level supervisors and managers and whatever else. Yeah. QAU says this, QAU wants that.
How are they selling
How are
they selling it to the officers?
Yeah, or this is dumb, but you have to do it or whatever. Like it's all about messaging a lot of the time. But so I think people think of it as like this black ops, good idea factory, Gestapo thing. Yeah. I mean, I do know that that's true. I got jammed up in the parking lot by some youngster who didn't know who I was and thought I was just some random dude wandering around.
Nice.
That's how little known I am these days.
Good for him for just stopping you.
Yeah, I know old timer that was in dope that happened to. Yeah. And he had a fit about it for 6 months. So
I get over it.
I was gentle. I was gentle about it, but
well, yeah. And like, would you want, like, that's what you would want him to do?
I said, hey,
what if you were just some
I said, you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
But I work here and have for a very long time. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I don't have my ID card. I'm not wearing like a badge and gun. Like it's on me, not on
exactly.
him.
That's on you, not on him.
He still let
he
you
was
in.
just trying to do a good job, and he was young. Yeah. And as soon as he found out, he was a little worried, Yeah. But I could tell you, I go to like the gas station to get a soda, and I'll see some coppers over there, and I'll wave, right? Like I've been here a long time, dude, and I've shared my fair share of sodas at the gas station.
Yeah, and they have no idea who you are.
And not only do they not, or if they do, they scatter.
Yeah.
Right? I think I'm going to get them in trouble or tell on them, And I am not good at like, hey, carry on or whatever. Like, have a good time. I don't care. Because on some level, I might care. I don't know what they're doing exactly.
Like,
but
he's now analyzing our quality over here, and we're standing around having a soda.
Which annoys me so much, analyzing our quality. But because that's what we're doing. We I guess it is what we're doing. But I don't like the idea of it. I know that. But like people scatter, or you can say hello in the parking lot, grumbling or whatever. It's like, oh my gosh.
During second briefing when they're in the parking lot.
Oh, we had that yesterday.
We have it all the time. Well, yeah, we'll get to that.
Oh yeah. But anyways, so that's it's not a misconception. That's a perception, right? What I would say the misconception is when it comes to early intervention specifically. What I can tell you is like our department's approach is as innovative as any you will find. So a lot of agencies, they just have like this numerical value they assign you. You did 5 things, right? And now you need intervention. Well, we don't see it that way, right? Without the context of what those 5 things are and how they fit together, right? What we're looking for is intentional intervention more than early intervention. We want to know if there's a behavior that we can point to that will lead you to some trouble down the road, whether it's a tactic, technique, language, behavior, right? More behavior than language. I think they're connected in a lot of ways, but there's something that we can turn a small lever on so that it puts you back on a path to righteousness, as it were.
Yeah.
Then we want to turn that lever as fast as possible, but in the right way, right? So, like, if I see that somebody's a really, really, really bad report writer, whether or not they've done anything quote unquote wrong or in violation of the policies, that's another one's a misconception that we're looking for policy stuff all the time, right? People telling themselves, I don't need to tell on anybody. They're telling themselves immediately. And in ways now with the cameras and stuff, like in ridiculous ways.
Yeah.
I don't need to go hunt for that stuff, but what I am trying to say is that we look for these levers to turn that put them on the right path, that where they're headed down a road that's going to cause them some trouble, that they don't have to do that, right?
Yeah.
It's intentional, it's reflective, it's focused, it's designed to turn the smallest lever possible. Think of like a sports thing, right? Like if you're watching film on your team and there's a small thing you can do better for the whole team to win, right? It makes you better, it makes them better, and those kinds of things. So almost everything that we do with relationship to early intervention, accountability, oversight stuff is designed exclusively to protect the cops. And I don't think I know people don't see it that way, and I can see why they don't see it that way. Everything from the messaging to the outcomes. I don't want to do this, therefore it's bad, right? And how it's framed and all that. I mean, I don't know if you still do, but he used to do the DT, the defensive tactics stuff. And like the messaging for that early on was tough when we were bringing in some of that stuff. And it's gotten better over time. John and his team's done a really good job of kind of messaging it differently so that it is what you really want cops to be is that when they're about to do something stupid or doing something to self-correct, right? Like you want them to be able to see it while they're doing it and self-correct and then do the right thing. We can debate whether the right thing was the right thing, right? Because there's some subjectivity to all of this. But objectively, what we want is for them to self-correct, to look at something and say, this is not the right thing to do. I'm going to do something different now or in the future, either or, right? But self-correction it guarantees that you're being reflective.
Yeah.
Right. And reflective is a skill. It's not an innate quality. Being reflective is a skill.
So how does an alert specifically work? I'm kind of getting the weeds, but I was going to talk to you specifically about like how EIS works. So like you're generating an alert because you've had this many uses of force, pursuits, high risk behaviors, and then
I'd love to talk about how EIS works.
Generates an alert, and then that's supposed to get sent down to the OIC and the sergeant, and then they look into those specifically, and then make a determination as to whether or not there's behaviors that are occurring that need to be adjusted.
It's 2 parts. So part 1 is that you have that system that you described. Basically, there's a numerical value of pursuits. There's a numerical value of use of force, whatever, right? Those hit thresholds. The thresholds are calculated mathematically based on kind of what the average median is. It's not a real thing, an average median, but average / median.
I know what you mean.
Is for that group of behaviors by that group of people, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's patrol, even drill down to like shift 1, shift 2, et cetera, because they behave differently in the environment, right? So we try to be reflective about that. But what we're aiming for typically is a numerical value that triggers an alert, right? That an alert that's not just noise, but that makes sense for the working group. So like you would become an outlier in some way by this numeric value.
Yeah.
Right?
So
But
how that makes sense is like, so Nick's on my shift.
yeah,
Nick gets in, say, 4 pursuits this month,
let's say
and
uses of force. It's easier to deal with.
okay, 4 uses of force,
Yeah.
and you guys determine that the average officer gets in 1 use of force per 6 months or something for
Yeah.
that effect. So 4 in 1 month is a lot. So it generates an alert.
Yeah,
It's
there's a
flagged.
threshold.
Now that doesn't mean that Nick is doing something wrong necessarily. It just means that Nick is doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's
And then now
exactly
we
how
have
I
to,
put it. He's doing stuff. That's
and now
what
we
know
have to,
about him.
but because this alert is being generated because he's doing more of that stuff than the average or the average median.
Yeah, the average / median.
Yeah, then we should now look at those specific events, correct?
Yeah,
To determine
that's how the system is designed to work. Yes.
to determine whether or not that stuff is bad stuff or good stuff or
Yes.
whatever.
The problem is that in practice, not just in our organization, everywhere. In practice, that's a very slow process. It's a lot to analyze 4 uses of force for
Yeah.
patterns and behaviors and things we do or don't like. Right. It's a lot of work. Number one. Number two. It's not so bad if you just have Nick that's throwing that alert, but you have Nick's partner and the car that's in the beat next to them because they're all going to the same problems.
Yeah.
So then it becomes like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people that are all of a sudden over this threshold, right? The threshold doesn't change throughout the year. It changes sort of once a year. And we could change it throughout the year, but then it's a moving target, right? So we have this program or approach that it gets changed once a year based on the preceding year's numbers for that working group, right? So the way it's supposed to work and does work in practice, sort of, is that you generate said alert, and then that alert gets analyzed or gets shipped off to a boss, right?
To
your boss. Yeah.
person's supervisor.
Yeah,
Okay.
that person's lieutenant, actually,
Gotcha.
right? And then ideally, that lieutenant is aware of that thing already, right? Because they're the ones approving all these uses of force, right? That they're aware of whatever, and if they have some issue, they'll bring it up, right?
Okay.
Problem with that system is it's pretty slow, right? So what we do now is that we also deploy our early intervention dashboard. It's called EI Pro. Some of the folks, all of the supervisors know how to work it or should, and all the lieutenants, captains, chiefs, etc. I don't think very many patrolmen log into it, but they could, absolutely could, and see their own stuff. That's another thing people don't pay attention to. We also don't do a good job of messaging that either. So I message it in person all the time. I don't message it. So here, you can log in. I messaged it. We're good.
There you go.
It
That
counts.
counts.
We'll
That
count
counts.
it. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, tens of people are going to know now.
Yeah, like 6 people who liked your last one. I don't know if that's true. I got 1 million on one of them. You said.
Well, if
Crazy.
you want to talk about a handcuffed dude with his wiener hanging out and you're as good looking as Cam, then you might get 1 million.
No.
Okay, so
Although once I got in a fight with a guy who threw a birdhouse at me that was naked.
that's funny.
A birdhouse.
A
Maybe we'll
birdhouse.
cover that on part 2
Yeah,
of
next podcast.
Lieutenant Chris.
I was just thinking about that. It's funny. Anyways, so you get into these deals. You have this alert. Somebody's supposed to look at it.
Yeah.
Right? It takes too long, so we put in the dashboard. The dashboard populates in a different way. So as soon as a record's created about that thing, it then goes into, it's now looking at the statistics, the actual math, right? So your first, second, or third degree deviation, right? And then you like red, yellow, green is the color of the dashboard based on that incident type. So now we can look at like the standard deviations and see, okay, this person's a true outlier for lots of reasons.
Yeah.
And we can look at it in near real time as to what the issue is, right?
Yeah.
So that's what the folks in my office do is they look at the people that exist on this side of the deviations, while also looking at the things that wind up turning into those alerts for those levers to turn in the short term, right?
So can I try to attempt to translate it and tell me if
Yeah.
I'm right or wrong? That's kind of a smart way of saying that, like, you're identifying the people that are doing a lot of the high risk behaviors, such as use of force, such as pursuits, those things that are the high risk things.
Activities.
And you're identifying the people who have the highest number of those, the outliers is what you're calling
Yeah.
them. And then what do you do with that once you've identified that person?
Try to
or
provide
persons?
context for it.
So,
So
because just
it's
because
stuff.
they have they're doing
Yeah.
a lot doesn't mean that that's bad. It could just mean that they're very active and they happen to find a lot of the
Yeah, or they're just very unlucky, right?
that too.
Could be lots of things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like
Work-
for instance, you will flag for car crashes without context.
Mhm.
So there's no mechanism in the system that says you've been in 10 car crashes. These 6 are at fault. These 4 are not.
Yeah.
It just says you've been in 10 car crashes,
Yeah.
which would be like a world record beater. But
Yeah, you could just be really unlucky and get
Yeah.
rear-ended and have people run red lights.
yeah.
and,
So without context, that means nothing, right?
Yeah.
It would mean something if you backed into the parking bollard 10
Correct.
times because we don't want that.
Yeah, we want you to stop backing into things.
Yeah, ideally,
Hitting
yes.
stationary objects is bad.
Yeah, yeah.
That's your fault.
In the car with the terrible sightlines.
Yeah.
Right? But they have cameras now, so we're good. Yeah.
I have a question. Maybe you answered it. You kind of sound like you guys were talking about it. But so you're saying that these incidents, whether it be pursuits or uses of forces over a period of time, it kind of that's what increases kind of like your,
Yeah. So on the one side, it's over amount of time,
uh-huh.
right? So in the
And that-
last 6 months, X has happened. In the
Oh,
last
okay.
9 months, but it's a rolling count.
Yeah,
So once
yeah,
you
yeah.
crash that threshold, if you keep doing stuff, you just keep generating alerts. That's why the alert system's not great, because if you generate an alert today and you go 5 months and 29 days
Yeah.
without doing anything new, but you did something on day 30, it starts your clock over again. So now I get a new alert.
Yeah.
Even though all those things were in this old job that you had over here,
Yeah.
and all these things, this one thing is in the new thing. There's no context for that, right?
Uh-huh.
So in
So
a lot
whose
of
job is it to
organizations,
sort that out? Is that your unit's job to sort that out?
that's what I have the 3 coppers for.
Okay.
Part of what I have the 3 coppers for. So they look at like the total context of all stuff. They
Mhm.
try to make sense of all that. They're also looking for things that are, the usual stuff. Like, are they doing what we want them to do? Are they doing things the way they're supposed to do them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
Like if you are somebody that, we've all worked with the person. I think I might have been the person where you're like, oh my God, I don't want to go to the call with this cat. It's going to get us all in trouble.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We know that guy.
Yeah, you do know that guy. Everybody knows that guy. You get to this point where you don't want to do that anymore, right? As the doer, you're like, how come nobody does anything about this person's thing?
Yeah.
That infers that everyone knows about that person's thing
Mhm.
in the same way that you do, right? So, like, if you don't take some opportunity on your own, this is why I'm a big believer in peer accountability, to say, I think you're doing a dog shit job,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
But not so much a thing that happens anymore, So, but you say that, and maybe they think about it, maybe they think you're an asshole, whatever, but they're not going to do anything. But they have a choice now, right? You've created some conflict for them to deal with
Yes.
internally. So then on the flip side of that, you get into this other thing where we assume everybody knows the same stuff. How many times somebody got promoted or something? Like, oh my gosh, that guy's such a slug or whatever.
Every list.
Every list.
Every promotion list. I love promotion time.
Yeah, it does.
As a person who makes no effort to promote, I really like promotion time as an observer.
You like what it does to people.
I like
You've
the
told
cycle.
me this before.
It's a cycle.
Yeah, it is a cycle.
It's an exact cycle every time without fail.
Yeah, I rarely know when they're testing for sergeant until I get random phone calls from people I've never talked to.
But it's the same for
about what the
senior,
work
same for
is that we do.
detective. I'm assuming for lieutenant. It's the same cycle every time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
You get into it, but yeah. So you get like you're inferring everybody knows what you know. By being mad about it, you're assuming that it's obvious to everyone. And I find largely that's not true.
yeah.
Right? So there are ways we can know different things through data that we haven't really ever done before for lots of reasons. Data literacy is like a huge problem in law enforcement anyways.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we talk about the narratives about policing, it's one of your favorite topics, right? These negative narratives and how to combat them and these other things.
Mm-hmm.
The answer is almost always in having good data. Like actually having a narrative of your own and being able to rely on it, that this is in fact wrong, and here's how I know and why you should believe me, right? And we don't do a good job of that internally, externally. We have never, the whole industry, I'm not talking about just my police. We just kind of take it and go on and act like it didn't happen. You can make a lot of arguments that the opposite should be true.
But I just don't think maybe you've answered it, but I haven't really. I'm not understanding it.
Oh,
So
sorry.
that those alerts get generated, right?
Yeah.
You realize Nick's doing a lot of stuff. We have to analyze who analyzes the stuff he's doing, and then who makes the determination as to whether or not that stuff is good stuff or bad stuff, and whether or not a corrective action needs to take place.
It depends on
what does that process
It
look
depends
like?
on the stuff.
So
but
after-
ideally, forget the alerts, because the alerts go to the lieutenants. They're just for their awareness. Like, here's a numerical value about this person, right? Please pay attention to it. And then they have the dashboard where they can peel back the layers of that onion.
Is there a way that gets relayed back to you? So you send an alert to the lieutenant, and the lieutenant analyzes it, makes a decision, and then sends it back to you.
Yeah, they have
say
to.
Nick
we
is
send them a document.
Nick is A-okay, or no, Nick's all jacked up and Nick needs fixing.
It's an assignment, more or less.
Okay.
And it doesn't say anything. It says this is without context, right? We're telling you that this person passed a numerical threshold with no context. What happened?
No, just talk into. It's weird. These microphones aren't.
Talk into the microphone.
Well, you got to talk into the top of it.
Oh, I'm talking. What I'm talking to the side of it.
Yeah.
Okay. How about now?
I can't hear it, but it looks better.
Looks great.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can see it on the screen.
I apologize.
No, that's good.
No, you're fine.
Numerical values, right?
Yeah.
All that's saying is, like, there's no context to this. You have to make a decision about what to do with this.
So who makes the decision, and how does that decision get
So for the alert, the lieutenant over the person
Yes.
decides what to do about it, if anything.
And then they report back
And
to
then they
you
just
or your
make
office.
a record of it, basically.
And okay.
They don't answer to me for it.
But they report back the decision to your office, or no?
Yeah, if there's a decision, that's what I mean. We're not saying make a choice. We're saying this alert is for your awareness. The other version of, hey, I've identified something, it's a different process. And I can go into that if you want. But
It's up to you.
no, it's fine. So there's two different versions of this, right? Version one is I'm telling you there's something that Nick is doing or has done that is of numerical significance, right? The other half of that system in perpetuity is that it is your responsibility, sergeant, lieutenant, whoever, to know statistically what the issues are and pay attention to them, right? That's why the dashboard exists. That's why it's so easy to use.
Yeah.
On top of that system, my guys are looking at stuff at the highest end of the outlier spectrum, third standard deviations, and looking for issues that may exist that are contributing to whatever the behavior is. So, for instance, use of force stuff. If you're an outlier in use of force, they would be looking at, they might even bring in the DTAC people, looking at anomalies and patterns, or like if you're yelling at everybody all the time, or being perceived to instigate in some way, right?
So then they're analyzing whether or not, and I keep getting kind of simplifying as good stuff or bad stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking for stuff that there's either it's really good, right? It's fine, or it needs improvement. I think that's how I would say it.
Yeah.
Like good stuff, like really good, we do recognize people for really good.
Yeah.
We do, it's fine, it's kind of whatever, and that's a really broad spectrum.
Yeah.
And then it needs improvement.
Yes.
And the improvement can be, well, forget the solution, right? That's the thing, that QAU doesn't come up with the proposed solution, right? So we identify what we think, and there's internal approval processes. It's not like it's just some admin officer making decisions about people's careers. They say, hey, this is a thing, right?
Look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is a thing. Will you look at it? And then the sergeant looks at it and makes a decision whether it's good or bad, or needs improvement, or we should continue pursuing it. And then I do the same. And then we take it to the division commander, depending on what it is, or the bosses, and we say, hey, look, this is what's going on. And they round table some version of an approval of a course of action. Very often when you arrive at that place with my team, you'll wind up on a PIP, right? Because it's behaviors that have already, like, I don't mean that we generate it to become a PIP, going the route we go, but it's almost always because there are other layers of stuff in between this point and this point, where it's tried and failed, different interventions and different trying to
define PIP just for those who don't know.
Oh, personal improvement plan, right? Like, or it's like, this is a clear direction we're trying to get you to go, clear objectives we want you to achieve, and the consequences for not doing it, right?
Which doesn't happen too often.
A PIP,
Yeah.
right? No, we don't use them very often. I think we could use them more often in a more targeted way, that it wouldn't be so stigmatic,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of understanding what it is you want from me, right? So like as an employee, I want to know what the minimum standard is and what excellence looks like to you, but I also want to know where the guardrails are. And like if the guardrails aren't clear and you're getting me in trouble for something, right? I've been down that road. Forget just getting demoted. I got wrecked
You want to know
multiple times.
how many pieces of flair you're expected to wear.
Correct. I don't want it to be a subjective opinion of someone. I want to know what you want from me and what the outcome should be, right? So I can work towards something, right? I feel like we often manage with like a do better. Yeah, but what does that mean? I mean, we'll know it when we see it, right? And I don't know that that's my favorite approach.
Specifically, what do you mean by better? That's what you want to know.
Yeah, well, what are the measurements? What are the measurables for better and as you see it?
Yeah.
Right. It drives me nuts, like vague advice about stuff, particularly vague professional advice.
Yeah.
Like it's like, what does that even mean to you?
I'm not into that either.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's how that generally winds up.
Yeah, I'm more.
And those things, like those big red flags, those are sort of dealt with at my level, my job. Like I will be talking directly to bosses, and it's usually not because we've identified like I said before, when people do stuff wrong, it's obvious. There's a clear direction for that stuff, right? This thing is obviously against our rules or our values or both, right? And IA handles that, right? It's an internal affairs case or a divisional thing or whatever. It's not a QA thing, right? When we identify things like misconduct, whatever that looks like,
you ship it across.
We just get rid of it. I don't want my people touching that at all, right? We're in the improvement business, not the discipline business.
Yeah.
So what we're looking for is opportunities to improve behavior and things like that. When misconduct or something happens, we just ship it off, gone. Especially because a lot of it's use of force related, things like that. Our hands are tied. Like by policy, I get fired if I don't do it, right?
Yeah.
But you get on the other side of where we wind up, this what I would call the gray area of stuff.
Yeah.
Is like where we've identified behaviors that might be very problematic or might be a pattern of something that now that we've recognized, we own it, and the department doesn't have time to figure it out, like what the next step should be before the next work period or whatever. And that's where you wind up with folks getting put on in the comm center or something like this. And it's always directly related to, now where we could be better is to say that to people, which I don't know what they say to people.
Yeah.
When we pull that lever, it's very much risk related, right? Like this is clearly a negative risk that we're incurring.
Yeah.
There's a behavior that's going to get this person hurt, bring significant amount of liability on the organization, or, don't kid yourself. You've seen it happen, burn the joint down like Minneapolis, right? Like if those behaviors are existing, I don't want to be responsible for them. So when we see something that's very dramatic, very issue, or a pattern has emerged that is of the same kind of type, we just pull the pin, basically. We sit on the bench for a minute while the bosses figure out what's going to happen next.
So a pattern, but like who conducts the analysis into the specific events before pulling the pin? You know what I mean? So you got the alerts generated. So Nick's got 4 uses of force.
Keep saying alerts. We don't use the alerts, but for the sake of what you're saying, so Nick's thing is normal, right? Yeah. He has 4 things, right?
Yeah.
Of those 4 things,
or whatever the number is to get him like 2 standard deviations outside of the mean or whatever.
Yeah, whatever the number is. Let's say he has 4 uses of force and keeps poking people in the eye.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Is he doing it intentionally or not? That's a question. But let's say he's not doing it intentionally. He's just using some weird Muay Thai thing that he figured out on his own, right? Yeah. Watch one too many UFC fights. I don't know.
It's a lack of creativity.
Yeah, like I legit used to do Muay Thai.
Oh, and then you like poking people in the eye and damaging
He's trying to be
shins.
like John Jones, man.
Yeah, I love that guy. Such a savage.
Yeah.
Anyways, so you get the finger poke thing, right? It might be just as simple as like, hey, dude, why are you doing this? Yes. Show him the video. What are you doing? And you say, oh, I used to do Muay Thai, and that's my thing. I push people in the face. Okay, stop doing that.
Yeah,
and that's the end of the whole thing.
Then it's done.
Right? That's the most common version. What happens, though, is that instead of me as supervisor or me, the training guy or whoever, going, and I will say in use of force, this is not a good example because they take ownership of all of it. But it's the sergeant or the lieutenant or whoever going, hey, QA says that you're poking people in the eye, and I don't really agree with that. I don't want you to be mad at me. I mean, I'm being hyperbolic a little bit.
Yeah.
But the reality is that my job is to protect the whole job.
Yeah.
Right. So like we're on the same team. If I'm telling you poking people in the eye is bad and you agree, then you should be taking ownership of the fact that we, the royal we, are saying, stop stabbing people in the eye with your middle finger.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's a disconnect with the patrol, with the.
It's not always the supervision either. I mean, I don't do a good job. I tell you, I'm being reflective about how I interact with people and stuff like that. And I just do my job and go on. Like, I don't really know how people feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
And my natural inclination is to not really care. You know what I mean? It's a series of tasks to accomplish and they make sense to me. So they should make sense to everyone. Right. And that's obviously not true, but,
let me ask you a
go.
question. So whenever you're sending, not just the alerts, because I know you're not talking about alerts, but any type of patterns that you recognize and you send that over to the watch commander, lieutenant, sergeants, whoever.
Yeah.
Now, does the patrolman, slick sleeve, whatever you want to call them, do they have access to seeing that kind of notice on EI Pro, or they don't? Right, as of right now.
Let me think about that. Do they get to see the alert? Okay, no, the alert doesn't live in EI Pro.
Okay.
So the way that whole thing is structured, right? There's layers of visibility.
Yes.
Pro officers have the lowest layer of visibility of anyone.
Yeah,
obviously,
of course.
And what they see, I think, is just the numeric values and how they measure up to everyone else. Right.
Okay.
But they do have the ability. I mean, read the policy or have anybody read the policy. You can come look at your early intervention information anytime you want to. I mean, the same thing with IA, right? You can go look at your stuff.
Yes.
So that's another misconception. That's how all this started with. People think it's a big secret operation. It's transparent. You want to know what it is I know about you, or what it is that we're talking about you, or how any of these things fit together.
Yeah.
Come see us. Come ask.
Okay.
I have an open door policy.
I definitely think that's something that.
Yeah, people worry about it a lot.
The majority of people on patrol do not know that they can go do that. Be like, well, I'm getting hit up for EIS every 6
I don't
months,
understand what's going on and all that stuff.
What's
I
happening?
would encourage anybody to call and ask any of the analysts, ask me, ask the sergeant, because the reality is that it's all transparent. If I'm allowed to show it to you, I will show it to you. I don't want anything to be a surprise. In an ideal scenario, early intervention is boring because there's nothing happening outside of people trying to do the right thing for the right reasons. Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't go right. Okay. That's normal in a police department, right? What we're looking for is the opportunities of things that I have seen things where there are behaviors that people exhibit that if we knew about it in advance, we could have done something to save your career, saved a job, saved ourselves a lot of heartburn and whatever else. And at the end of the day, that's what I was talking about, being an act of compassion. All supervision, all accountability, when done right, is an act of compassion by my view. Yeah. I want you to be successful, ergo I don't want you to screw this up for yourself. Just like you do with your kids, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like with my kids, it drive me nuts all the time. And I always have to be the bad guy. Yeah. And I hate it. Hate it with a passion, but the alternative is worse.
Yeah, to let them
grow up shitty.
Grow up shitty, make a life-changing decision in a moment. Like, I mean, especially now with the way that experimentation with drugs has gone. Yeah. Like, it's so devastating to make one mistake sometimes.
Yeah, one mistake and you have a fentanyl overdose.
Exactly. So, same idea.
Okay. I'm trying to stop beating this horse, even though
no, beat it as long as you want.
We could beat this for a few more hours, but I'd like to move into some other stuff. Does that not sound good?
I mean,
it's been hours.
It probably was fine.
Just beating it for a few hours
until now. Already dead.
Together for quite a while. We've been beating it together, and we still haven't finished.
Yeah. I wanted you wanted to talk about overtime, and so
I have a question for you. I want to know your perspective. You always have a depth of perspective that's unique, in my opinion. So I see on the one hand, you have what I said before. What we want is people to work within the capacity we expect them to, right? So like, okay, we give you 2 or 3 hours of admin tasks that are terrible, granted. I think that's true in a lot of jobs. Truthfully, we just don't acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Stuff I don't want to do. Okay. And then there's the stuff you do want to do or have to do, the actual output of the work, right? And it should all theoretically take place in the amount of time we give you to do it and the agreed upon contract, more or less, right?
Yeah.
10 hours work, 10 hours pay, right?
Sure.
I observe, and I want to know your perspective on this, that there are people who love the job. They work.
Yep.
They like have like this altruistic motivation to make a difference, or like
Some kind of motivation.
deep seated motivation to thrill seek, whatever the motivation is. It doesn't matter to me. They love to come to work and they stay at work all the time.
Yep.
Right. Then you have people who work exclusively for the monetary benefit. Right. They work tons of overtime because they want the money or need the money in a lot of cases anymore. It seems like.
Yeah,
Right?
they started they're paying their mortgage on overtime, which is a bad move.
Yes.
Very bad move.
But people do it.
Yes.
And they do it routinely, and people with time on do it.
Yeah.
It's cool to me
Because they have to.
because they have to.
They put themselves in a position where they have to work that overtime.
Yeah, you have no choice. And not only do you have to work it, you have to hustle it like a crackhead,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Which is bad.
And what's funny is like people don't remember what it used to be like, but I think they're going to start remembering what it used to be like. Is that
Wasn't as
you
easy
had
get.
to compete for overtime
Yes.
when you needed it, where it was like, okay, I got an in with this guy to get the concerts and an in with this guy to get the SEU overtime.
Yep.
No, you're not in our club. I remember very distinctly having to turn people away from traffic overtime and have like waiting lists for checkpoints and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. My question is, it's a two-parter. One, I perceive those two groups of people. They're obvious. We see them. You can name off 10 of each right now.
Yeah.
Then you have the other half, or the bigger majority, the 90%, let's say, that are like deathly afraid or refuse to work a moment more than is absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? So the first part is, which do we prefer? And the reason I preface that question with, we were talking about every little thing in this job takes a little bit of your soul or whatever, causes some moral injury, some extra piece, right?
Yeah.
So like these guys that want to work all the time, they absorb a lot more of that, right? And you see a lot of people burn out in that instance, right?
Yeah.
And then you have these other people that do it willingly just to make the money, but they're still sort of effectively achieving the same thing.
Yes.
But then you have this other group of people who have no interest in doing anything other than that, which is minimally required.
Yeah.
Right. And the question becomes, which do we prefer? Do we prefer, which is healthier? Which do we prefer? Maybe not the team that we're on, the organization, but as people who've done this job for a long time around other people, which do you prefer?
I would say, I mean, and you could do this in your analysis maybe, is that you're talking about the amount of work an officer does, and you have like high-end producers and low-end producers, and you kind of you figure out what that average is. I think that a lot of those high-end producers are the people that are in category one, which you kind of divide into two subcategories of people that work the overtime because they're really eager to, because of altruistic reasons, or because they're thrill seekers, and the people that do it because they have to, because of, poor financial decisions or whatever.
Or that
Let's
they're
just-
ambitious. They're financially ambitious. I've seen that group too.
I think for the purpose of this discussion, just make that one group. People
Yeah,
that work
it
a lot
is
of
one
overtime
group.
for
Yeah.
whatever the reason they work it, and people who don't work it because
yeah.
they don't want to work the
To
overtime
me,
at
it's
all.
distinct. There's a distinction in the difference, but yes,
Yeah.
not that it matters that much.
Yeah, I don't think it really matters
Right.
what the motivation is, as long as they're doing things correctly. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
don't think
motivation
there's a
doesn't really
problem with it other than it affects the bottom line. Like overall affects the bottom line.
Yeah, well, I
And
mean,
creates
I
narratives.
don't
I
care
don't
about
know.
your motivation so much as like when you go out and you do a thing and you're having
Oh, that
interaction
you're
with
doing
people.
it.
If you
Yeah,
do the
there's
thing-
nothing worse than somebody who doesn't work on straight time and does all their work on overtime.
Oh, that too. Yeah,
That drives me nuts.
that too. Yes, that drives me nuts as well. No, I guess I'm not sure where I was going with that, but
We put them in two groups.
put them in two groups instead
Yeah.
of like one group and then another group split in half, or thirds or whatever it was. What is better? I mean, I think it's better to have people who want to do more than to have people who want to do less. So,
It is better to have people who want to do more
yeah,
than want to do less. Yeah,
yeah.
I tend to agree with that.
And
I just had to think through it.
I think of like an old saying that I'd heard years ago that I kind of prefer also, which is I would rather, as a supervisor, I would rather have to pull back on the reins than have to spur. Like I would rather have to tell you if you work for me, hey, slow down and do a little bit less of that. Then they'd be like, hey, what are you doing? Get out there and go do stuff.
Yeah, go do stuff.
Yeah. And so I would prefer, just from a supervisor standpoint.
So you're saying it's mostly indicator of motivation, the willingness to go work a lot.
Motivation, yeah. And you kind of broke it down into more specific categories of why the motivation exists.
Yeah.
And I don't really care so much.
You don't care. Just you're motivated or unmotivated.
You're motivated to get out there and go do stuff. Then I would rather supervise you than if you're not motivated to go do stuff and you'd rather do the bare minimum or do the least amount of what needs to be done and then get out. So I guess the answer that I would give, to simplify, kind of thinking through it out loud, is that I would prefer Group A that wants the overtime over Group B who does not want the overtime at all.
So would you say that it's true? I've heard it said that 90% of the global work gets done by 10% of the people.
Yeah, like the Pareto distribution rule.
Yeah, well, Pareto's 80-20, right?
So, I don't know the exact numbers.
But same. Like, let's say, okay, 80% of the work does 80% of the work gets done by 20% of the people.
Yeah, a small group of people do the majority of the work.
Yeah, yes. Would you say that you think that's true?
Yes.
Like functionally, observationally, like there's no science behind it.
I don't know the exact numbers or statistics or whatever, but a small number of the people do the majority of the work.
Okay, so then my question would be, are we okay with that globally? Like, is that distribution acceptable? I don't mean like as an organization. I just mean as a police agency trying to do stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like my problem with it is that ideally that it's more not because they care about the overtime and making money or not making money. If it's there, go get it. Who cares? What I do care about is that it's not a sustainable model, and talking about people getting burnt out and things like that. Like we put people in a position as an industry, I'm not even talking about our organization. As an industry, put people in a position to choose. I'm either going to be motivated or I'm not going to be motivated. And if you're motivated, there's also all these consequences that come from that. And then we wonder though, like all three of us have some reaction to this idea. There's a whole bunch of people who don't do stuff. Yeah. Right. So then my question is like, we either need to incentivize doing stuff more for them or de-incent or change what the stuff is. You could do that. You could change, like, you don't like doing this, but you do like doing that. So we can kind of figure some of that stuff out. You know what I mean? Like the incentive, like traditionally productivity is what? Like going to calls, doing traffic stops, doing subject stops. That's more or less what we say.
Essentially, yes.
Right? Yeah. With an outcome, ideally. Right? A report, a ticket, arrest, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The question then becomes this roundabout way to get at two things. The first one was the moral injury thing. Is it okay? I'm not sure I have an answer. It seems to be the way it always has been, but it doesn't seem like a sustainable model. So like what I've been thinking about is how to make it more equally distributed, necessarily more equally distributed, or if these folks can do all of that, certainly some of it could be done by these folks, right?
Yes.
Just to distribute it different, right? The construct, 80-20. Okay. I want it to be like 60-40 or 50-50 in like this.
So I understand
utopian world, right?
I understand the motivation.
I didn't want him to make a socialism joke, so I had to be careful how I said that.
And I understand and agree with the idea of pushing that, whatever that large group is, the 80 group,
to work harder.
And then, but the motivation to pull back on the 20 group is to
I don't even know that it's
them from burning out.
No, I'm not suggesting you pull back on them.
Okay.
At all. I'm saying that you make it unnecessary for them to carry that burden.
Mm-hmm. But again, that goes to, I guess,
doing it by choice though. So maybe that would always be true.
I see.
That's where I'm stuck at is like,
I kind of understand the reasoning for splitting it instead of just being Group A working the overtime, but why they're working the overtime.
They're
working the overtime because they put themselves in a financial situation where they have to.
Yeah, there's 100 reasons why you might do that.
They want to go out there and get after it.
Yeah, or they just feel like no one else is doing stuff. I've met those people over the years. Like if not me, then who, right? Here I am, send me guys that kind of martyr themselves
Yeah.
underneath this idea that nobody's going to do anything. I think that I sort of fall into that category more than anything over the years. Like I want to quote unquote make a difference. The money's nice, so it's a dual motivation to it,
Yeah.
right? But at the same time, like the nature of someone who quote unquote works hard, you can pick them out of a crowd in any job. That's more like characteristic than skill based. You know what I mean? Like intrinsic value stuff. So then my question is like, how do we get the people who maybe don't have that same set of values to do more because of the cost, the financial cost, whatever. But I mean, you burn yourself out working that way.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about, we were reflecting on being older and thinking about the job.
Yeah.
That's what I've been thinking about a lot lately is this concept of, okay, what's the real cost of being that hard charger?
Yeah.
What's the real cost of being stuck
Well, I've been thinking
carrying
about
that burden? Like the gang guys historically, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
16, 18, 20-hour days because they're the guys for this one thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of people, they may not like to hear it, lots of people who could participate,
Yes.
but they feel obligated. It's their thing, ownership, territorial, whatever. It's like 3 or 4 different probably things that go into that. But at what cost? Like how many of that subset population are the people that wash up somewhere and we have to figure out what to do with it? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like that hardworking group, it's always true. You have very few people that burn out in a spectacular way that are not also chasing work for one motivation or another.
Yeah.
That's maybe that's a floating question, a hanging question for the podcast, but it's one that I think about a fair amount.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately and getting older and reflecting or whatever.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in my early years working at like you said, a pretty high,
Breakneck pace.
yeah, to where I got to that when I hit the 5.5 year mark, in my mind, I was ready to quit, but I couldn't quit because I had financial obligations,
See?
and I kind of reset and came back to it or whatever. But there was a point where I felt like it was too much, and
I
then
feel like the people who last the longest, that are the healthiest when they leave, are the folks that are able to do exactly what, reinvent themselves. Like in some way, like maybe not like reinvent the way they do the job or their personality, but like they're able to kind of see the next steps and then take a few steps to the left so they don't run into that wall or whatever.
yeah,
And like they're
guess
the people that are a little bit more adaptive to the situation they found themselves in.
yeah. Well, I went from working gangs to working day shift in the part of town where there's the least amount of crime.
Yeah.
So it was a complete polar opposite in like the type of police work, and that helped and to kind of reset the
Yeah.
clock.
Yeah, exactly.
But then now there's some downstream repercussions of that. Is like I think in my personal life with my family, like what I did in my early career and how that relates to how I operate now, and like like when I'm like, hey honey, I gotta stay late today, or I gotta go in on this day off, and the amount of tolerance that they have that there is in my personal life for that behavior that threshold isn't very high anymore.
Yeah.
Or because I kind of burned up those credits on the front
Oh
end.
yeah. No, I get it. 100%. And I think that I wonder at times how your kids will reflect like when they're your age and modeling the behaviors you modeled working, or the opposite because they didn't care for, especially when they were little, when you were doing all that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I often wonder like about unintended consequences in a variety of areas, but that's one that I think about is like you grind it out for so long, chasing effectively. Again, it depends
Whatever
on the
it is you're chasing.
motivation. Yeah.
Chasing something.
But you burn candle at both ends, and we allow it because we don't have any other. I say allow, it's not even the right way. We encourage it in a lot of ways, demand it sometimes. I think it's true of everywhere. It's not just this agency, but that when you talk about like the construct of wellness, and like if you could get 20% more out of this group, right?
Then you wouldn't need to get.
You
as
wouldn't
much.
need to encourage, or you could have like reflective conversations with people who are headed down that road and go, hey, look, 20 something years of experience, I could tell you that unless the money is an absolute necessity, leave it.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. I see like, yeah, Maybe I'm just an old man now. I don't know.
I guess then
Staring off at the
best,
horizon. I don't know, but
if I could summarize your question without giving an answer, the best way I could think is, how do you get 20% more out of the 80% group?
yeah, that's why I like the way you think, by the way,
And then that
because
would
you
help.
distill things into simple constructs.
What could we do to get 20% more out of the 80% group?
Yeah.
To help relieve some of the pressure off of the smaller.
Yeah, the necessity goes away, so then it becomes purely like whatever your motivation is.
Do you think if there was a magic pill that you could give to make them work 20% harder, that it would?
Yeah, and I don't even know that we're saying work 20%
or
harder.
Produce 20% more, or whatever that is.
So we get more capacity out of the smaller group, whatever that means. Whether we take stuff away, not disciplinary or whatever, but you have less of this to do, so you can do more of that.
I just
like different things. I don't know, and I don't even know, because the way we do this stuff, average wise, yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to my own question. That's why I was asking. I wanted to hear what you guys thought.
What I would say is that I think even if we had an answer to it and we could say, you do this thing and that we'll get this much more production, I don't think you're going to solve for that 20% group that's out chasing that overtime.
You think no matter what you do, they're still going to pursue it the way that they are?
There's still going to be a small percentage of it.
There's a
for
certain
sure.
class of people, yeah, that you drop them off, they're going to just go.
Yeah.
And they're not going to stop.
I tend to agree with that.
And
that's a part of it that I had been thinking about as well, that maybe there's zero difference no matter what you're chasing here in this idea of mine, that those guys are going to be those guys no matter what you do.
I guess there's, like, I would say we could probably get, I know you got to go, so we'll wrap up here. And I would say that there's some early intervention things that you could do with people way early on in the front end in that first year or so to have these conversations. And like if someone would have had this conversation with me in year one, I might have adjusted the way I operated.
Do you think you would have listened?
Probably not.
That's the question, right? Is that these young guys got it all figured out, man.
Yeah, you're right.
I know I did.
I don't know.
Maybe. I talk to them all the time. It surprises people to know that I mentor some of these guys. Mm-hmm. I know, appropriately, by the way.
But yeah, maybe I don't know. Some sort of early intervention conversation with those go-getters, and also early intervention conversation with I won't call them the less go-getters.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of what we've tried to fill in is that negative space. That how do you know that guy's a slug versus that guy's not a slug?
Yeah.
And like everybody knows. Do they though? And then it becomes like, what have you been doing with the time we gave you? And like some of that stuff. So that's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was probably the most non-answer answer I think I could give.
No, that's good.
But
I can give you like a really.
I'd like to hear your perspective as well. I don't think it'll be shitty. It might be bad.
It's not the best, but I think one of the ways you could alleviate the people just going after overtime is the fact that whether or not it's there. And the one thing is like having more people, having more police officers.
So you're saying the one way to resolve it is have enough people to do all the work on straight time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that.
That's an easy answer. That's not a very well thought out one. But
yeah, but it's a real one, right? Like, like at some point, the organization, that every organization, you have more work than you have people to do it. Mm-hmm. There's only one way to continue to get it done, which is to do more work with the time you have or work more time, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like everybody gets that, but nobody wants to, and I'm not even talking about the administration, to be clear, just so we're talking, but generally everybody understands that there are some police departments have like 4 people per 1,000 people, right? Like an astronomical ratio. Some places back, he's like 20 to 1,000. You know what I mean? Like they got 1 million cops for every one civilian or whatever.
Yeah.
That's hyperbolic, by the way.
I know.
Okay. But here it's been like, remember the old days, the union thing, right? Like it was supposed to be 1.2 or something.
Yeah. And
it was never over 1, and it's still clearly probably right around the same.
You're saying 1.2 officers per 1,000.
Per 1,000, right?
Citizens.
And I don't know that it ever was or wasn't. And like we're getting closer and closer to our actual complement all the time.
Yeah, in the last 5 or 6 years. And it's
not alleviating a lot of work pressure, that's for sure. So
we've cranked out a ton of officers in the last 5 years.
Probably, if you were to take every agency in the U.S., I would venture to guess that this one's in the top 3 or 4% number of bodies hired for the agency size.
Per capita, yeah, per size of the
Yeah,
agency,
yeah. We've hired a ton of people like to keep up with the attrition the way we have, and it's remarkable to be honest. But even still, as we get closer to the complement, like the ratios aren't changing that much as far as, at least by my view. I guarantee you there has been discussions, there'll continue to be discussions about how to start talking about making the complement bigger. But it's hard to have a discussion about how big the complement should be when you can't fill the seats you have.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think every agency's dealing with that. They're saying, we need more cops. So everybody agrees we at least need the number we're supposed to have.
But where are we going to get those humans?
Yeah. And then you start talking about standards and other stuff.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Well, we can go to the next
A fun one.
We can go to that next time. We'll do a part 2.
Oh, okay. Part 2.
I'm gonna let you, I know you got to get going. So.
Yeah, I got to go to flag twirling.
You got anything else?
No.
You got anything else before?
Honor guard. No, what's it called? Color guard.
Color guard.
Color guard. My daughter does color guard. Anyways, no, thank you for having me. This was cool.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I don't know if you did.
I did. I had a great
I
time.
don't know how much of this will be thrown in the trash. Cutting room floor as it was.
None of it.
Probably none of it. We're gonna do it again though. We'll schedule
Whatever.
it soon.
You didn't even say anything.
No. Well, just because I didn't
divisive.
say anything, what do you call it? Exotic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that it shouldn't wind up on the cutting room floor.
No, everything you said was super good.
Colorful.
Yeah.
Colorful. There you go.
Colorful stories about my experience.
Well, Chris, thank you for
Kosovo
coming out.
next time.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you everyone for listening and stay frosty.